Uh-oh.
John, I don't think you can have a bad hair day.
Wow.
Well,
I would very courteously beg to differ with you on that.
yeah, I
Okay.
couldn't get my hair cut when I was back there because the humidity just makes it look like I've got a perm. And if I get it cut back there and I get back out here, stick straight up.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, well, I got the easy way to deal with all of that. When I got out of the Army, I swore I'd never get another GI haircut. Get down the road about 45 years or so, and guess what? That's a regular thing now.
Yep.
Brian, it is 5 o'clock and we need a couple more people to join to make a quorum. And I did get calls from Rob and Liz. They're both going to be late. They had other
I did
commitments.
see that.
Okay, good.
So once we get a quorum, I think we'll start officially at that point.
I think
And we have
need
what,
one more
5
person.
now?
Monica's joining right now. So we need one more.
I don't know about you all, but I started sleeping last night with a filter mask, like a COVID mask.
They're
That's
handing
about-
those out at City Hall today for anybody that wants them. Maybe they have some of the KN95s left over.
Good.
Well, the smoke has been so bad for us that I found out that it has exceeded the ability of the electrostatic air cleaner we installed years ago to handle it in the house. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a veteran. We have a veteran whose wife had to make the emergency. She has asthma, had to make the emergency. They were almost going to try to intubate her at home before he could get her to the hospital, but they made it to the hospital. She's still hanging in there.
Well,
That's a
good. I hope she recovers quickly.
Darren Williams. So
Hey, John, what was your MOS?
22G Nike launcher system repair.
I was 91 Bravo.
So it was an interesting experience. About half my time was spent actually out on a site north of Boston, babysitting 18 nukes, which the surrounding area didn't know about till almost 20 years later.
Of course.
And we didn't think anything of it at the time, and of course, the attitudes about such things have changed a little bit.
No, I know. I didn't know you were in the Army until you just said that. So, I didn't know you were my brother. Love you, brother.
You got it.
All right.
Yeah, Army brat as well. So I grew up with it. It was tougher. It was tougher at home than the time I spent on active duty.
Well, my family were all squids. So, no
Oh,
offense, no
okay.
offense to Rob.
Yeah.
And what is a squid in the Army?
Navy.
Navy.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
I was one for 8 years, and part of 4 of which they sent me through college, and I got commissioned. So
Oh, even you're a worse squid then.
yeah, absolutely. 8 years of that stuff. 12 years.
I came out as staff sergeant. I don't know. John seems like you seem like uncommissioned as well. Were you or not?
Yeah, I was an NCO for most.
Yeah, me too. Okay, good.
Back.
All right, Dave. All right, Dave. You got to get your stuff together there, sir.
Well, I actually, early on there, I was an operator and then an instructor for nuclear power training at the reactor plant in Idaho.
Holy cow. Okay. Yeah. So you had. Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
Sent me to Purdue for 4 years.
was kind of interesting.
Well,
back-
obviously Rob, he was a missile controller and a nuke underwater. I mean, there's like 10% of 500 guys to get that job.
Yeah,
So, I
that's
mean, if anybody on this call who's a vet wants to give somebody some credit, it would be Rob Wilson.
yeah, talking about the best, it was interesting when I went to the electronics school at Redstone Arsenal back in the 60s. Was there with a Marine contingent, along with an NSA contingent also. But boy, back then it was the Marine Corps was about the only real military operation in the entire DoD. All the rest of us were, oh man, I'll tell you.
No, bullet bait. Yeah, bullet bait.
So I'm going to interject real quick and ask Melissa if we have a quorum as of yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. We need one more.
Yes.
So I have my, I was going to say I could call folks if you wanted, but that means I'd have to go out.
I just emailed Evelyn and Harriet. I didn't know that they didn't tell me they were not joining, so maybe they're just late.
I could vote twice.
I can have my clone come in on another computer.
There you go, Jim.
Yeah.
Good idea. Not.
Melissa,
Would you like 2 or 3?
I'm kind of surprised Evelyn isn't here because we went over at lunchtime to feed her horses. She had an appointment down in Sedona, so I'm surprised she's not back yet.
Well, and Liz Baldwin was in Sedona too, so they're on there. She's on her way back, but she was going to be late, and Rob was going to be late.
I saw the farrier over there, but I didn't see her this afternoon.
Hey, Bernice.
So before we begin, I do want to recognize that Arina Contreras from Supervisor Vasquez's office is here. And so is Naomi Yazi from Supervisor Begay's office. And I just want to express our thanks to both of them for being here, representing District 2 and District 4, and asking that they continue to keep the 2 supervisors informed.
Today, the board has a special session to adopt the budget, so that's where those guys are. But Supervisor Vasquez will be on probably later. But I do have some notes that he wanted me to talk about with you guys, but nothing so crazy.
Melissa, is that something that we could go ahead and do, is to hear from the 2 executive assistants of the supervisors?
I think we can go ahead and do that and do introductions if you want. Oh, there. Well, see, this is all for Evelyn and she's not here. The pizza dog did the PowerPoint show up?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we could do that part of it. The introductions.
Okay.
And then just pause there.
So this is Brian Bates. I am the co-chairman along with Rob Wilson for the Doney Park Fernwood Timberline Long-Term Planning Committee. And I want to welcome everyone, both the members of the community as well as the committee members. And I greatly appreciate everyone attending and sharing their perspectives. So to introduce myself, I've lived out here nearly 40 years. And this is an amazing place. I really love it out here. Let me go to John Ruggles.
Okay. I am a planning and zoning commissioner representing District 2, doing my best to avoid having Supervisor Vasquez boot me off the commission. So, and the fact that I hung around with all those nukes you heard about 50 some odd years ago may explain some of what I have to say. That's enough.
Dave Browning, please.
Yes, lived here, moved here in '06 and got involved in some community stuff on the board of the library and some other things that I've been doing. I like this, I really like this committee and the work that we're doing because I think it's really important.
Thank you, Dave. Bernice Carver.
I'm Bernice Carver, and I've lived here about 45 years. And I've been involved in the community and in the city of Flag. And I worked for Gore for a lot of years. I worked for the school district for a lot of years. I worked for the county health department for a lot of years and volunteered for them, even when I worked at other places. And I was instrumental in getting our school district to be the first tobacco-free school district in the state. And our school district's model policy was used as a world model at the World Conference on Tobacco or Health. I've also did all the smoke-free air ordinances for the county and the city, worked on those and collected signatures and organized doctors and people to come to meetings. And I have been active in the horse community for 45 years and active in rescue animals and things like that, Girl Scouts, softball, lots of things. Thanks.
Thank you, Bernice. Let me go to Jim Clifford.
Sorry there, I missed my unmute button. Jim Clifford, District 4 Planning and Zoning Commissioner, worked for W.L. Gore, been in Flagstaff 30 plus years. And I am a committee member.
Thank you, Jim.
Don't let me interrupt. This is Kathy Waldrop. I'm joining late. I apologize, but I wanted you to know I'm here.
Thank you, Kathy. Let's see, Jess, you're with the county. Let me scroll down. I think, Monica, you're next.
Hi, I'm Monica. I've been out here about 33 years, and I was on the committee that took 3 long years to write this plan 20 years ago.
Thank you, Monica. Who else? Do we have anyone else on the committee? Melissa?
I don't see anyone.
I think that's it. I've got an email from Evelyn. She's having some technical issues. So she's trying to join. I just sent her the call-in number.
Okay. May I go back to Jessica? And Jessica, I believe you've been keeping track of community members that are attending.
I have.
Would you please go through and record the individual community members that we have joining us this evening?
I've got them. Did you want me to also read that list aloud right now?
Please, so others know who's here.
All right, so I've got Ed Jersa, Doug Meyer, William Leroy, Autumn Montoya, Barbara Greenlees, Tony, John Paxton, Ken Lorton, James Michael, Brian Bollig, Rick L., Sandra, Karen Land, Jim Johnson, Teresa Alfred, Cheryl Barlow, Bruce Jacks, and Kathy Waldrop. And then I see a phone number ending in 1150.
Yep, that's mine.
Is that Kathy?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you. Great.
Thank you, Jessica.
No problem.
Jess McNeely. Jess McNeely from the county. Do you have anything to share at this point?
No, just Jess McNeely with the county community development department, assistant director, planning manager, and happy to be here with you guys.
Thanks for joining, Jess. Did I miss anyone? All right. Having taken roll call, we're still waiting for one person. Could we get an update? Would it be appropriate to get an update from the supervisor's executive assistants?
I think that's fine.
Arina, would you share with us first, please?
Now I'm off mute. Thanks, Brian. So he's been busy, which is good stuff. We've been getting prepared for the fire and flood mitigation for the museum fire area. We had a sandbag event with United Way last weekend and had some community members' involvement along with our probation office participants. And yeah, it was a great event. I'm trying to think what else. There's a bunch of stuff going on, but the main thing is he's been in conversation. Can you hear me?
Arina, excuse me for a minute. Someone has not muted themselves, so I'm going to ask that everyone mute themselves except for those who are speaking. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, something that he wanted to just bring to the committee is that he's been having conversations with NAPTA about getting transportation out into that area and to see what that looks like and to get a breakdown of costs. So he's having those conversations and, you know, just putting that out there to have something to think about when we get to that chapter, to maybe have it as a possibility. So yeah, that's pretty much it at the moment. They're going to be going on break the board in July and then ramping back up in August. But
Okay.
we'll still be attending all the things that we normally go to with you guys. But yeah, if anything comes up, just let me know. I can book things and set up times with Supervisor Vasquez. And that's pretty much all I have.
Mr. Leroy, I don't see that you're muted, and I was hearing a lot of extra noise. I don't know if it was you, but if you would help, would greatly. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting in a room with 16 horses and 3 wild children, but no, yeah, I'm just kidding. But
yeah, it was the 2 wild children that threw me off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You're down to 0, sir.
Okay, let's go. What is our next activity? Melissa, can we review the, Naomi, excuse me. Naomi Yazzie.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Naomi, and I'm the community liaison for District 4 Supervisor Begay. And as Ayanna just mentioned, they're in a special session right now. So I'm attending on her behalf. And recently, we have been attending a lot of the Navajo Nation chapter meetings, Western Agency meetings with the Navajo Nation. And we've also been attending or actually doing tours on the roads on the north end of the reservation and then also on the south end of the reservation or on the reservation plus south of Flagstaff. So that's what we've been doing. And I just attend these meetings and I usually report back to Supervisor Begay. And I really think you guys are doing a great job, you know, with the area plan. And it's a learning experience for me, as I have indicated, and you guys have gone a long ways to get this far. And, you know, I'd like to say kudos to all of you. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Melissa, can you hear?
I can hear you, Brian.
Can we move on to public comment and question review? Because I know we have one question that we need to respond to from Mr. Meyer.
No, that requires the full committee quorum.
Okay.
And we are trying to contact others.
So I hear we're in a holding pattern in a airplane flying over O'Hare for the next 3 hours, huh?
Essentially.
That was a bad comment.
Yeah.
Ryan, this is Jim Johnson. Are you not
sir.
accepting any comments or anything right now?
Melissa, I have to defer to Melissa. My understanding is that we need a full quorum, one more person before we can take public comments. Is that accurate?
That's right. So the entire committee, you know, we have a full committee meeting available for everyone to hear what the comments are, because it is a scheduled agenda item. And so the agenda is up on the screen, and that is actually part of agenda item number 1, because those are the recorded and the formal comments that we respond to.
I just had a comment that I was going to take advantage of what appears to be several people from the community development department. So anyway, I guess we'll wait.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'm not sure what to do, Melissa.
Well, I'm hopeful that we will get Evelyn in with her technical difficulties. Evelyn is trying to call in. We just got another message, so she's trying to call in. How is the smoke out there right now? Is it pretty heavy?
Shut the windows.
You had to shut the windows?
Oh, yes. Windows are shut at my place.
We had on the east side, a little bit south where Monica is, a nice window of very clear air for a while.
Mhm.
Then the wind direction changed back to the typical southwest, and it
Exactly.
came back in. So no windows open tonight if it stays that way, that's for sure.
No, my daughter ran out and took her clothes off the line when that shift happened because she
Oh.
didn't want smoke-filled clothes off of the clothesline.
Yeah, no kidding. It was clear today in town until a few hours ago, and then it started to move back in. Has anybody heard an update on the fire? I have not.
Well, it is readily available. You can go to several sources, the county's Facebook homepage. Another source is InsaWeb, which is basically a site that will give you information on every fire incident in the entire country.
Right.
And it has a lot of the same information, so it's readily available. The updates vary a lot in terms of the time frame. I haven't looked at it for about 2 hours.
Any weather forecasters out there?
Yeah, I took a look at that here about an hour and a half ago, and it looks like we may have a sporadic start to our summer monsoon starting next Monday. A little more than what we've had so far.
Did anyone see rain yesterday? There was a promise of rain, but it did not come through, did it?
Yeah, we had a typical Arizona 1-foot rainfall where I'm at. That's how far it was.
Sprinkled
between the
here
drops.
at my house, about
It did?
100 drops.
Yeah.
Well, everyone, apologies for the delay. We are, I guess, unforeseen circumstances kept other people from joining us on time tonight. So as long as everyone's willing to just wait a bit more, we can see if we are able to get that quorum going.
Melissa?
Hey, I'm really looking forward to that virtual pizza.
Okay,
So,
I can put that back
Melissa,
up. Yes.
Could we look at calendars and determine when our next meetings are?
Sure. Well, the next meeting is scheduled, the regular scheduled meeting would be July 8th.
Okay.
And that's
then are we-
that's the first Thursday of the month.
Okay. And 14 days from that is July 22nd.
I'm sorry, that's the second Thursday of the month. And right, then the 2 weeks after that would be July 22nd. So, you know, depending on how things go on July 8th, then, you know, past 2 months, we've had the second monthly meeting on the Thursday following, second Thursday after the first meeting.
I will be gone on July 22nd, and that would, if we meet tonight, that would be when I'm to be chair.
Mm-hmm.
But could we look at August quickly? So we're kind of trying to use our time to plan where we're going.
Sure. The August meeting would be on August 12th, Thursday, the 12th.
I'll actually be in the Grand Canyon, so no Wi-Fi.
No Wi-Fi. Are you going to be on the river?
Enjoy.
Oh, heck yeah.
Nice. Well, if you're a phantom, you might be able to get Wi-Fi. I wouldn't
Really,
try either.
Melissa?
No, I'm
Really?
kidding. I'm Monica. I'm teasing.
Buddy.
Don't do it. But I think I can share that once we're finished with the land use goals and policies, then we'll have one section to finish up, and that would be transportation. And that after that, then we are starting to look for some open house venues so we can schedule what we're planning on, and hopefully if everything keeps going the way it is now, we can host some in-person open houses. Out in your neck of the woods over there.
Yep.
So we'll try to make them both in person and virtual so that.
Do you have any dates that you've been looking at for those public meetings?
Well, I'm starting to work with the school district on seeing what's available at Cromer in possibly September. It really depends on how quickly we can wrap up the work that we're doing with the goals and policies.
Okay, so you're looking at Cromer as a potential, say, August or September.
I wouldn't say August.
Okay.
But you know, once we can wrap these up, then we'll get that date finalized and reservations made. So we're starting to look at what's available.
Melissa, you can sign me up for an in-person bit of help with that. I did that with the update to the zoning ordinance, and it was
okay.
It was pretty good getting to talk to people about that.
Well, I'm hoping we'll have most of the committee available.
Would certainly hope so. Well, actually, I could get one other thing in. I owe Monica an apology about part of the discussion on the 2001 area plan for causing a little bit of confusion about the corner lot size and the measurements. So I probably introduced some confusion into the discussion, which was completely unnecessary. So I did want to let Monica know about that.
Thanks, John. It's that couple of degrees in mathematics that makes me such a geek about the whole thing. But, you know, I've started going into all of my proofs and all of this, and it was just, yeah, we're good. but thanks, that was funny.
What you
I'm
need,
usually
Monica,
the-
is spherical trig.
I'm usually the guy sitting there with a calculator that says, wait a minute, you calculated the angle for this wrong. And Melissa got a dose of that for the the renewable energy ordinance discussion yesterday. So,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah, those are some funky calculations. I've messed with some of those formulas. They're a little bit crazy.
it's you know, it's always worthwhile to say, well, I've done something I shouldn't have and confuse people and apologize for it.
Melissa, is there any other item that we could address while waiting for another committee member?
Hey, Brian, this is Jess. I just talked to Melissa. She's trying to call Evelyn right now, so she'll probably be back momentarily.
Thank you, Jess.
Sure.
Brian, do you think I could, this is Jim again, do you think I could have a sidebar conversation with Jess that really doesn't have a lot to do with this committee?
Jess, would that be appropriate?
Sure. Yeah, if it has nothing to do with the committee stuff, sure.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, in a roundabout way, but it's just a situation. I've been trying to contact your department for months and there's nobody there. Nobody answers the phone.
Okay.
Anyway, I finally got a hold of a guy named Adam Hicks
Mhm.
and had his cell phone number, and he's been very responsive.
Yeah. He's the building official.
Anyway, it's a zoning thing. I call it the Silver Saddle Drive North RV Park, RV Sales and RV Repair Project.
Mhm.
And there's anywhere from 4 to 6 RVs on that property. We're Airbnb them, we're renovating them, on and on and on. I think we've got utilities hooked up to them. I think there's a Wildcat septic system. And Adam gave me a case number that was 200 and something -21. And he explained to me that that's how many cases there are this year that have built up, and nobody's really started on any of them. So I understand nobody wants a job these days because we're paying them not to work. But anyway, that's the reality we're facing out here. And I just wondered if you had any idea of what else I could do to kind of move this process along to get something done.
No, I'm pretty sure I saw the information on that one. And I saw where it was entered into our we use our permitting system to manage compliance cases. And that is one that we are using. We have a staff of 4 building inspectors. While we don't have any code enforcement staff, our 2 code enforcement positions are vacant. And we're using our building inspectors when they are in the area. And we're really trying to triage with life, health, safety at the top of the priority list. And we will get a building inspector out there to confirm, that if there's a violation of the zoning ordinance as soon as we can. But it's in the system. So the upside of that is it's not coming out of the system until it's resolved.
Anyway, I understand the labor thing. And Adam's even taken the time to personally drive out there and drive by it himself. So I think
good.
he's doing what he can do, but it's 200 some cases is a lot of cases out there when we're already halfway through the year and nobody's doing anything.
It is. Yeah, this has been a bumper year for everything, specifically building permits and certainly code enforcement as well.
So anyway, I just wanted to get some.
You got
feedback from you. I appreciate
I'll keep trying on this one.
Okay.
Brian, this
Absolutely.
is Melissa. I think we have a quorum now. Evelyn has joined us.
Wonderful. Thank you, Evelyn, for
There you
Thank
are.
you, Evelyn.
persisting.
Oh, gosh. So sorry.
Thank you
And
so much, Evelyn.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Melissa, for following through to.
There,
Hey,
Evelyn.
thank you. Thank you. Can't eat it though.
I know.
Okay, my next question is, how long is it going to take for those pepperonis to fall off of the pizza?
I think they're glued on forever.
Oh, my gosh.
Did you want to give Evelyn a moment to introduce herself?
Yes, please. Excuse me for,
Okay,
comment.
I'm on my husband's pad. Can you see me too?
Yes.
Okay. I wonder how. Anyway, so I'm Evelyn. I am on the committee. I have been here in Doney Park or Timberline for 11 years. I've been in Flagstaff for about 50. And I'm so sorry I'm late.
Thank you, Evelyn. Melissa, can we go back to the agenda? I think we're moving to public comment.
There we are.
Okay, so we will take public comment. Oh, shoot, I don't have my watch with me.
I've got it.
Okay. If you are a public member and would like to comment, please try to articulate your statement as best possible and limit it to 3 minutes. And I will ask Melissa to interrupt you at the end of 3 minutes and ask you to conclude very quickly. Otherwise, please mute yourself. And I see that James Michael has his hand raised. James?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a quick question here, and it's I have the runoff basin. You guys called it a public entity. Can you kind of explain that, what that means to me, and how that area is protected? Maybe something basic from Melissa or you. Thank you.
Melissa or Jess, would either one of you take that, because I don't know the answer.
Sure. Are you referring to the basin, the 80-acre basin?
Yeah, just past the Chevron station there. Yeah.
Right. So the county owns that, and it has been designated as a flood control basin. There has been some discussion about doing some, possible passive recreation improvements, but there's nothing in the works right now. But that will remain as a basin for flood control purposes.
Good, because I was concerned about the density issue, somebody coming up there and wanting to put apartment complexes or anything like that, just because it is a large area, and I'd hate to see, anything built up 2-3 stories over there. And, the density and lighting, it's same thing as everybody else has said, that we're out here for the dark skies and kind of elbow room that we like. So that was my concern, and you guys have addressed it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you'll pull your hand down, James, then I will take the next public member wishing to comment. Mr. Leroy?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So 2 things. One, did all of the committee members sign any agreements when they joined the committee to affirm their commitment to fiduciary duty to the residents of Doney Park? First question. You don't have to answer it. So I'd like to have an answer down the road. Second thing about my statement is, so I've been doing a lot of research on the word shall and should, because Mr. McNeely has talked about a legal opinion that he got somewhere between 215 and 216, where someone at the Coconino County Attorney's Office indicated they couldn't use that language because it wasn't enforceable or whatever. I'm not going to go into that because I don't want to waste my 3 minutes. At the end of the day, I have obtained and reviewed multiple area plans from Tucson all the way up through all the counties in Arizona, and the word shall, and I sent the Supreme Court decision to the committee and to Melissa regarding how its usage has been discontinued and replaced with the word must. So I have multiple area plans that have been adopted and confirmed by a variety of different communities all across the state where the word must is being utilized. And the word must is obviously much more enforceable than the word should. So I'd like to know from the committee and or from any zoning representatives why we cannot use the word must in our area plan as the language enforcement element to protect our rights as residents. That's it. And I would like to see the statutory elements that indicate that you have researched it and demonstrated provage to that question. That's it.
Brian, I'd like to respond.
Yes, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I think we should stay with should and forward your comment, Leroy's comment, to our county attorney for future action. It's not our call to make.
And I would agree with that, and please do. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I made a motion.
Go ahead.
I did make I thought I said make a motion.
Oh, I missed it if you did. So we have a motion to take
Brian,
Leroy's-
Brian, we're not at a place in the meeting where we can actually act on a motion like that. We're still in the public comment period. So if there is, we do have on the agenda, the next item up is to discuss that specific comment. So maybe we could hold the discussion until then.
Very well. Thank you, Melissa. Any other community member that wishes to share? I see a hand raised for TA.
Yes, this is Teresa Alfred. Thank you. I'm in agreement with William Leroy. I have read lots of documentation as well on the usage of the word must. I've seen that in a lot of documentation, both federally and state, because I have been doing my research as well. I find the word should doesn't have enough teeth in it. I would feel better with using the word must instead. Years ago, I had a situation where
Excuse me, Teresa, whoever has not muted themselves. Go ahead, Teresa.
Yes, years ago, I had a situation where there was property behind my home. It was set at a certain density, and the people that owned it wanted more money. They wanted to increase the density, and the verbiage was not strong enough in that area. And no matter how many people showed up at the meetings for the P&Z, we had at least 80 to 100 people there. And in the end, the only thing that saved us from that being triple density was the fact that there were so many things to check on, water, other issues, erosion, that they ran out of time. And when they ran out of time, they lost their money window. And instead, Ponderosa Trail got put in there. So I think we need to make sure the wording is as strong as possible, so this doesn't happen to our beautiful community out here. And I'm worried about the low priority areas that after 20 years are up to flipping. And that really concerns me. So I just wanted to say that I agree with William Leroy. We should be using a stronger word, and that word should be must. But thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Teresa. Other public comments? Hearing none, let's move on. I think we have a comment that okay, I'm going to read this out loud. This is a comment from the June 10th meeting, and we made a commitment to respond to it tonight. The request was, I'd like to hear the entire Doney Park Timberline Fernwood Planning Committee discuss the current wording of land use area 2 and its subsections A and B in the context of the results of the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood Survey question 21 and how that wording would be changed to remove encouragement for developers to submit high density residential projects in the Doney Park Timberline Fernwood planning area. Our response, the policy and guiding principles apply to all zone changes and are not specific to, quote, high density residential, end quote. Second, it provides guidance to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors for how rezoning requests should be considered. Third, by necessity, the decision makers will have to take in context land use 1 and all of land use 2, where it clearly states that the minimum lot size of 1 acre should be maintained. This is the minimum zoned lot size in the Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood region. In keeping with previous practice, if someone has submitted a question or a comment that we respond to at a future meeting, and you have additional comments, additional concerns, we ask that you email Melissa Shaw, and we will then respond as we have this evening.
Brian, could I
Yes, sir.
offer an additional comment that adds
Yes.
a little to this, I think, and that is if you want to see language like this changed, you've got several opportunities to do that. 2 of them are the hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then the hearing that the Board of Supervisors will have as a part of the process for adopting this as an amendment to the comprehensive plan. Show up, say what you have to say, and I guarantee you, at least people like me on the Planning and Zoning Commission will be listening to you. And I think the Board of Supervisors is also very receptive to public comments that are made relative to things like this.
Thank you, John. Moving on, Melissa, do we have any other comments?
There is another comment following this one that was received since the June 10th meeting. Did anyone else from the committee have any thoughts on this question?
I'm sorry, this is Bernice. I'm having trouble with my computer. I wanted to comment on that last comment from Doug Meyer that I really have been reconsidering. I've been rereading the survey again. And I also think that we need to change the minimum lot size from 1 acre to maintaining existing lot sizes. And we do have 1 acre lots here, but we also have 2.5 and 5 acre lots. I think we need to do everything we can to maintain those lot sizes.
Thank you, Bernice.
You think I could add a little bit of clarification and perhaps support for what Bernice is saying relative to
go ahead, John.
Zoning? That could probably be considered without a problem. It is appropriate for a goal. The other thing is that since most of Doney Park is already zoned AR 2.5 or 5, that it would require a zone change, and that sort of a statement would provide a little more guidance in terms of, well, what you should consider if a zone change request to say divide a 5 acre parcel into 2.5 acre parcels comes before the Planning and Zoning Commission. It would be worthwhile, I think. So it can be done.
I'd like to also add my 2 cents as far as the wording with must and shall and should, that I agree with Will Leroy and the information that he sent us from the federal government, that we definitely should use the word must. And I think that we ought to incorporate it for emphasis in both the goals and the policies and use the word must.
Okay, thank you, Bernice. Is Jim Clifford, County Board of, not Board, Planning and Zoning, Jim Clifford, do you have
Yes.
anything to add?
No, I agree with what John is saying. When it comes before us, we look at what the public wants, and we do what what is already in the books, as to lot sizes and lot splits and all of that. So we already have a very good basis as to how we rule on this type of an issue.
Just one real quick addition to what Jim said. We have to take a look at it in terms of legally supportable findings when we make a decision, such as rezoning at the Planning and Zoning Commission level when it goes into a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
Brian, this is Melissa. Then to
Yes.
get some clarity on the direction here, the land use policy 2 was a policy that the committee had reviewed and discussed 2 meetings ago, and had agreed to the language and moved past it. So what am I hearing now that there is interest in going back and re-reviewing this and editing that policy?
Definitely.
So Bernice is interested in doing that. I'm wondering if we do that now, or if we ask the full committee to go back, review it on their own, and we pick it up at the July 8th meeting. What would be more appropriate, Melissa?
Well, that could be, I think it's up to the committee at this point. We have gotten through a large part of the land use goals and policies, and we're working on those tonight. However, the topic still is land use. And if that's something that you wanted to go back and look at, we could do that. Again, we're trying to, complete the land use chapter so we can move on from there. This is a question that did come up, and it's really up to the committee at this point, Brian. I think you have the option to go back or to put it off and have the committee look at it separately and revisit it next time.
Let me ask, because I think we had talked about trying to get through the rest of the land use this evening. What if we, how does the committee feel about finishing our review of the land use chapter, that section that we haven't done, and then after having completed that, we come back to land use part 2 that has come up as question tonight?
Tell you what, I'll give you my opinion. Why don't we put it in the parking lot and pick it up as kind of a cleanup effort, because I do believe Bernice has made a good point for what she's asking. But let's get through this tonight. We got a late start.
Yep. Okay. Let me just see a raise of hands. Those of you who support continuing with our land use revision of the policy sections we have not completed, that we go ahead and do that now, and we put land use policy 2 in the parking lot, and we will pick it up at our next, either our next meeting or later this evening if we complete our section. Okay, Evelyn, I see hands up. Myself, okay, and let me scroll down here real quick. Those of you, thank you, Monica. So anyone opposed?
Brian, I think it's a good idea. I can't do a raised hand from where I'm at.
That's fine, Jim. Thank you for chiming in. Okay, so let's move on to reviewing the remainder of the land use policy.
Brian, there was one more comment, and that was the
excuse me.
email that has been discussed already from William Leroy, and this is posted here for you to see.
So I
And it's-
did a quick lookup of the dictionary on the word must. Of course, every dictionary is different, but the first thing it said was should. In its definition. So must means should. Should means must.
Interesting point there, Monica. Thank you.
I think they mean the same, it's just different the way it's written into the sentence as to how it reads.
Actually, I'm going to comment on this just really quickly. There's an excellent article about this and the Supreme Court decision that Mr. Leroy mentioned in the American Bar Association Journal. I don't want to muddy the discussion any further beyond where we are right now, but if any of you have a little bit of extra time, please Google that should versus shall, and it will pull up the ABA journal article on that. And do go to the discussion that originated that for the article. The author is up in the upper left-hand corner of their homepage for that article.
And I will point out that all committee members have received that URL link. So
there's more to it than just that. So be prepared to do a little more scratching when you get there.
Oh, understood. Thank you, John. Let's move on to the remaining section of the land use policy that we have not yet edited. Oh, wait a minute, our draft vision.
Right, and remember, if you recall, we had decided to just look at this each meeting, just to make sure that this stays in front of everybody.
And Melissa, you do a much better job of reading out loud than I.
Okay, I'll read then. Remember, it's a 4-part vision statement. The first part is natural resources, open space, and environment. Our community's priority for the future of Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood is to maintain and protect the natural environment, resources, and open spaces that reflect our rural lifestyle and values. We value the biodiversity of our native flora and fauna and the open space that surrounds our community. Access to public lands, trails, and multi-use path systems is important to maintain our quality of life, and we encourage our partners and neighbors to establish safe and legal access easements to these amenities.
Any comments from the committee? Hearing none, let's go to the next.
The next portion is community character and values. Our community character is influenced by our rich cultural and historic diversity, natural environment and open space, expansive vistas, dark skies, and natural quiet and rural lifestyle. The diversity of our community is reflected in our history and place names: Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood, Winona, Cosnino. Our closely connected community reflects our independent lifestyle, recognizes our reliance on each other for social support, and strives to be inclusive, fair, and safe. Our community character is reflected in large lots, a variety of building styles, and a recognition of geographic differences that reflects the country living we value.
Any comments from the committee? Hearing none, move to the next, please.
And this is land use, growth, development, and partnerships. Our area plan supports responsible land use and planned growth that maintains our rural lifestyle and character. We embrace a future that accommodates residents while ensuring that new and additional development is integrated into our community in a manner that respects cultural and historic resources, supports community values and aesthetics, and considers the environment and long-term viability of natural habitat and water resources.
Comments from the committee? Hearing none.
And the final section is transportation. The transportation system in Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood integrates and connects multimodal facilities for transit, pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian users throughout and beyond the planning area. Our future envisions transportation corridors that are safe and accessible for wildlife, motorists, and all non-motorized users. Enhanced opportunities for transit and commuter options are possible at key locations throughout the planning area.
Any comments from the committee? Thank you. Let's move on, please, Melissa.
Okay, and then this slide just demonstrates as far as the different chapters, or rather elements of the plan where we are. And so we are on land use growth and development. The final portion to review is transportation and circulation, and that is nearly ready for the committee. It will be ready for the committee to review once we get through this section that we're currently working on. And Brian, just to recall where we had left off, we had actually completed up to, we needed to pick back up on land use policy number 17. However, there was discussion about wordsmithing number 15. And so we've worked on it a bit, and I can actually break away from the slide in a second and get to the policy, but I wanted to show this because what the policy, actually the way it had been written, it seemed like it was attempting to define spot zoning and strip development. So what we're suggesting is that we put the term spot zoning and strip development in the glossary and simplify the policy. And if you all can see, oh, and by the way, the image below is just a screenshot from somewhere in Arizona. I will leave that to anyone to guess where that might be from. That's an example of strip development, but that is a nearby community in Arizona, just to put an illustration together for that.
That's on East State Highway 69.
You're right. Oh, and that's because you read it. Never mind, I forgot that. Okay, you were tipped off. Anyway, so the land use 15, and I will pull up the document here, but just to show you the simplified version, it would read, zone changes resulting in spot zoning and strip development disrupt community continuity, impede efficient traffic movement, create aesthetic problems, and often conflict with existing adjacent residential uses and should not be approved. So this was a cleanup item that you all had decided to come back to today, Brian, but I wanted to show it in the slide.
Thank you, Melissa. I think moving the definition of spot zoning and strip development to the glossary is very appropriate, and I'm in favor of adopting the policy as it is stated here. Other comments?
Hey, Brian, you did a very good job of kind of pushing this along. So couldn't agree with you more.
Same here.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Dave. Any other comments from the committee? So I understand, by hearing nothing, I understand that we are now adopting land use 15 as it is presented on the slide in front of us.
Okay, and then with that, Brian, I can stop the slideshow and bring up the document.
Please.
Melissa, I've got a question. If I was to leave, would we have a quorum?
No.
Okay, I need to change over to my cell phone because I just got called into work. I have a building that is running real hot, and both my chillers are down. So I will call in on my phone, and that way we'll still have a quorum. So could you give me that phone number, please?
Yes. Hang on 1 second. Are you ready?
Yep.
669 900 6833, and I'll give you the passcode.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Okay. What is it?
The passcode is 6.
You have not entered any.
Oh, excuse me. It's 363055.
hang on.
You entered 6. This meeting ID does not exist. Please
Yeah.
re-enter your meeting ID
Yeah.
followed by pound.
Give me a second. Okay, would you say that again, please?
363055.
You entered 363055. This meeting ID does not exist. Goodbye.
Oh,
Didn't like me.
Okay, try that 669 number
yeah,
again. And there's a
yeah.
longer ID number I had. I didn't give you the longer ID number.
Okay, let me call it back in.
And
Enter
here's
your meeting ID followed by pound.
Okay, what is it?
876
876
9898 7809.
You entered 87698687809. This meeting ID does not exist. Please re-enter your meeting ID followed by
Nope.
pound.
Didn't like that neither.
There were some extra numbers in there. I do see Rob Wilson just joined us.
You
So
have not
Jim, we will
entered
have
any
a quorum if
Okay.
you needed to go.
Yep, I'm going to need to go because I got to run
Thank you
over
for
to
trying.
Guilty Lane. Nope, not a problem. Thank you. I'll try to get back on if I get back in time.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Did Rob Wilson join us?
Yes, sir, I have.
Wonderful. Welcome back, Rob. And
I apologize for my tardiness.
Would you quickly introduce yourself for the committee and community?
Sure, my name is Rob Wilson. I'm the owner of Timberline Firearms, and along with our chair tonight, Brian Bates, I co-chair this committee and look forward to this evening's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Melissa, can we go ahead with, my brain went dead. Thank you. Yes, that's what I were.
Yes, for the land use. Did the screen share for you?
It does,
With the
and we have a
document?
beautiful raven in a snowstorm at the
We have your
Grand Canyon.
desktop, not the Word document.
Okay, sorry. Yes, that's my desktop.
Oh, that's okay. I kind of like it.
I like it too, but that's not going to get us very far tonight. Did it share now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And if you could enlarge it.
Yes.
How's that? Is that big enough?
Bigger, big as you can get.
How's that?
I'm with Bernice.
That's
Tell me when.
That's good.
A little more.
Oh.
more.
There, that's good.
All right. So Brian, here is number 15, which we just looked at.
Okay. And we've
And then-
adopted that now.
And then, right, and then we had gone through 16 and ended on 17 here. And if you like, we can go back and look at the context of this. So this section is the goal for land use policy 17 is that new commercial development should occur on existing commercially zoned land. And then the policy reads, environmental impact should be carefully considered in reviewing commercial requests. Those plans showing sensitivity to the natural environment, including the preservation of views, trees, and native vegetation should be favored.
Could we please back up to are we on LU 17?
Right, and that's what's on the screen here.
Okay, could we please go back to LU 16? I was not able to attend that last meeting, although I did send in comments. I think we need to strengthen the rezoning from residential to commercial. Is strongly discouraged and should be considered only as described in this section. I think there's too many, I think we need to use stronger language there to prohibit the rezoning of residential to commercial. And I really feel that those exemptions are too vague.
Can you be more specific? Which one is too vague? And what's the vagueness?
Okay. In L2A, item number 5, the provision of recreational parks and public facilities. Could public facilities also be multi-unit housing if it's owned by the government?
Well, that, okay, first of all, I want to back up for a minute, Bernice. Because I'm thinking about this. We did go through this last week. I do recognize that you said that you have made comments on it. I'm wondering, I want to go back to the committee, since we have adopted this, is this something that we should come back and review after we've completed the rest of the land use? And then we have a larger context from which to observe or to assess what
Okay.
Bernice is sharing with us.
Yeah, I agree to that. I also want to comment on even item 1, 2, 3. All of those could be, used as a reason to bring in multi-unit development.
Well, I'm not sure what you mean by 1, 2, 3. I'm looking at land use 16 and it's A, B, C, D.
Oh, no, I was looking at LU2, the exemptions.
Okay, so we've
Yeah.
agreed that we will come back to LU2 per comments from the public at the end of this evening, or once we get through the rest of the land use section.
Okay, well, does that include LU16?
It can. We could come
Okay.
back to it at that point.
Yeah, I would like to go back to LU16, please.
Okay, allow me to repeat myself, please, so that I'm clear. The committee did adopt LU16 as you're currently reading it last 2 weeks ago. And so it has been adopted. And what I'm suggesting is that we need to use this for context as we go to LU17. But at the same point, I think we will come back to this when we look at LU2 and then also LU16.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bernice. Melissa, can we move down to 17?
There's 17 open for you again.
So I have a question. In that environmental impacts, from my perspective, should also include water resources. And water is not mentioned there. I would like that to be included if it is within the purview of this committee to comment on it. Because we do comment on water, and I think that we would want to protect any environmental impact to the water, whether it be the Rio de Flag or what do I want to say, the aquifer.
Brian, are you suggesting modifying the policy language?
I am, and I'm trying to think of how to do it, including preservation, views, trees, native vegetation, and water.
And water resources?
And water resources would be fine.
Did you want to ask for committee input?
Yeah, go ahead and temporarily type it in there, and then I'm open to committee input, absolutely.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of the benefit of some research on this. The county is extremely limited in what it can do. I took a look at legislation relating to this. Water is under the purview of the Department of Economic or Environmental Quality, excuse me, ADEQ. The county is very limited. The one thing that is not limited would be what is considered an exempt well under the statute, and that is a well that is pumping no more than 35 gallons per hour. So that limits it a great deal. The county simply cannot regulate groundwater. We do not have an active management area in the county or northern Arizona for that matter. And that's what it would take under the statute to allow the county to do any regulation of groundwater. We're not there yet. We don't have the authority to do that at the county level. So it's very limited. Surface water, that's a little different. You can do some regulation of surface water with the county at the county level. So just so you know where this is coming from.
John, let me ask, because we're in a situation in which within 20 years, I think we're going to be in an active management area. And your comments are right on. It's the same as my understanding. But I'm very, very concerned about our water resources out here. And
Brian?
my point, yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but LU9 specifically addresses water earlier here. And I'm wondering if that's consistent with what your thought was.
Well, that's the amount of water. I'm looking at the quality of the water.
Oh.
And so is there a downside to including water resources?
This is Evelyn. I think that if we're looking 20 years down the road, it might be a good idea to just put it in there. It might not be anything that we can do anything about now. But if we're looking in the future, then things could change. And if we have it in our plan, then it's in there.
Yeah, and just a little bit to add, I think that's a good point. And that if you have it in there as a goal, a policy that could be looked at down the road if state statute changes. And we're in a position where the county could do some regulation. It's in there. It doesn't hurt, I don't think, to have something stating that that is a goal, and it's a very important one too.
And if I could clarify something, just to jump in, I'm looking at the definitions that are currently in our zoning ordinance and also that are in the comprehensive plan. And I would suggest maybe using the term water features instead of water resources, Brian. A water feature shall include floodplains, riparian areas, rivers, streams, springs, seeps, and wetlands. So that's out of our zoning ordinance. That's why the word shall is in there. And that is something that has currently been adopted. So would that cover what your thoughts are in terms of environmental impacts?
My issue is it doesn't cover aquifer, and that's the source of our drinking water.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I know it's a good aspiration, but we're really hamstrung by statute right now. But if there's some way to word it that would say that would be a goal, gosh, I wouldn't see a problem with that. Brian, you're pretty good at coming up with wording for something like this.
So LU 17 is a policy.
It's a policy.
And John, you're saying put it in as a goal. So do we go back up to the goal statement?
Well, the goal statement that this policy is nested under is that new commercial development should occur on existing commercially zoned land.
Yeah.
And what I want to make sure is that we don't get some development which ends up contaminating the aquifer in whatever way it happens, and thereby contaminates, basically you lose the water out here, you lose the value of all your homes. We're in big trouble. So I would like to maintain water resources.
Okay.
Personally.
Yeah, I think that would probably do it, and do it without stepping on any toes here in the process, as far as what the ADEQ does and what the statute says.
Hey, Brian, not to overcomplicate this, but considering the goal this is under, I'm not sure LU 17 even really fits here very well. And perhaps what you were talking about earlier, an actual goal addressing environmental impacts would be a better way to go, because new commercial development should occur on existing commercially zoned land doesn't really have anything to do with the environmental impacts of that.
That's correct, Rob. Good point.
So maybe we can agree on the wording of LU 17 as it stands, and request a goal statement that would, fit appropriately for that, and be better served.
I can put a notation in here and we can look at that. It may be a matter of formatting and organization.
Yeah, it might fit somewhere else better too.
Yes.
It just doesn't seem to fit under this particular goal to me very well.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rob. That's a good comment.
Okay, so I'm going to highlight this, and if you like, we could come back to this in terms of either reformatting, organizing it differently, or adding a new goal, and continue to move on.
It really belongs under the original title of commercial goals, where that one reads, new commercial development should be well-designed, environmentally responsible, and primarily serve. So environmentally responsible is already there. That's where this one belongs.
Right there. So that's the first, and it doesn't have a number, but there's that commercial goal. So it should be nested under these policies. So we'll move that up to this, under this goal.
Thank you.
Got it.
You've made that note, Melissa?
I've got, yeah, I'll do that. I don't want to do that now online. It will just change all the numbering. So
yeah,
but we'll make that number 12.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out, Rob. So there we are, back to 17. Okay.
So now as written, 17 works really well because it meets that environmental aspect of that previous goal.
Right.
Melissa, do you want to have it read, including the preservation of views, trees, comma, native vegetation, comma, and water resources? Or do you want the and in there or not?
You're right. I just fixed it.
Okay. Favored. Should be favored. I would say should have very high priority or something of that nature. Should be favored for me is not strong enough.
Yes, we need to make it stronger.
Because they must be the way it is.
Could you repeat that?
No, I was just kidding. I said, must be the way it is.
We could go to the beginning of the sentence and say priority should be given to those plans showing sensitivity. But still, even if they're prioritized, that doesn't mean something that's not protective of the environment could slip in.
So do you want it to say one of our should or must or whatever word we land on? Plans must show sensitivity to the natural environment, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, that sounds good. Plans must.
And no, you really don't want to do that because this is a policy document. It is advisory in nature and not regulatory.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was just going to say
should.
This is a much larger.
Whatever word we're debating there.
Yeah, we will really go down a rabbit hole if we debate the use of should versus for a non-regulatory document versus using must or shall or will.
Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered that. And I want to go back to Dave Browning, who was trying to make a comment.
No, that was about the same thing as if we can't do it here and nowhere else. We're going to have to really address this should versus, thing, and for the whole document, not just one place.
Yeah, we do. My point in my comment was just instead of having the should be favored at the end, and I agree with Brian, do we want to go back to the front of the sentence and make the statement at the front of the sentence saying plans, whatever word we're using, show sensitivity to the natural environment.
Showing preservation of the natural environment.
Well,
that's a good
but
one.
if you stay with the showing, then you've got to have something at the end.
No.
So
Wait a
if you
minute.
have those plans or plans
I'm with you.
should show sensitivity.
How about must show?
Those plans showing protection or demonstrating protection of the natural environment, including should be how?
Well, just one point, you're already saying that the environmental impacts should be carefully considered.
Yeah, that's true.
Right at the beginning. And I don't think you need to say should be favored at the end of the second sentence if you've already said that.
Yeah, I think we can just leave it. Plans demonstrating protection of the natural environment should have higher.
Still running yourself to the favored again.
Yeah.
Plans demonstrating. It's just if you start the sentence that way, you've got to end it with something.
Right. Commercial request should demonstrate protection of the natural environment.
If you just did it this way, plans demonstrating protection of the natural environment include preservation of views, trees, native vegetation, and water resources, period. Then that's a statement.
Yeah, now you're just defining what that means. So
right, because your first sentence, environmental impacts should be carefully considered in reviewing commercial requests, and then you're saying what that means.
I agree with Melissa.
You can just look at it that way without the track changes.
Yeah.
How about plans must demonstrate?
No, you can't. You got to leave the must out. You cannot do that with a non-regulatory document.
Well, isn't this a guide to the zoning?
It is a
ordinance?
guide, yes, but showing, let me tell you, when something like this is looked at the P&Z commission level, you've got the word demonstrate in there right now. And that is going to be a cue to ask, how do you show that this is environmentally sensitive? You're going to have the applicant come forward and say, okay, we have built a retention pond for our waste material that meets various specifications for preventing it from leaching into the ground. That's the kind of thing you're going to wind up getting or requesting and having somebody come forward with in order to show that it protects the environment. That demonstration is the real key to this.
I agree with John. And I would delete should be favored.
Yeah, I'll go along with Brian there.
agreed.
That's how it would look. It's a pretty
So
clear
by
statement.
removing that last three words, now that the sentence, the second sentence doesn't work.
Plans should demonstrate.
There you go.
I think that's what I was saying at the get-go.
It was.
John, is that too straightforward? But yeah, that's where I was trying to go, is that they just need to show it, if should.
Oh, no, you've got it nailed, I think.
Okay, other committee comments on LU 17?
Brian, I apologize for being here late. Have we had a discussion about the shoulds, the shalls and that stuff, or is that necessary?
We've already covered that in part, and there has been an agreement, Rob, that
okay,
the section on must needs to go to the county attorney, as that's beyond our purview.
Okay, I was considering making a recommendation that rather than play word police here throughout this entire document, and especially because it's a document that could exist for 10 to 20 years in the future, we just include the word should in our glossary and define in that glossary exactly what we intended should to mean, so that there can't be any question about it. And then use should at will.
I can assure you, Rob, that after looking at other comprehensive plans and area plans and their equivalent in a number of other counties in the state, that is a statement that does appear.
Okay, thank you.
All righty. Let's move on to commercial and non-residential uses in residential zone goals.
Okay, I can read this if you like.
Go ahead.
So the goal is commercial and other non-residential uses in residential zones, including conditional uses, home occupations, cottage industries, and bed and breakfast establishments are compatible with the residential character of the surrounding area. And if we need to just pull this apart a little bit, I just want to mention that there are conditional uses as well as home occupations and cottage industries that are allowed in, obviously that's part of our land use table in the current zoning structure. So there are some existing land uses that require conditional uses or home occupations, cottage industries that are permittable and that are allowed under our land use table. So I just want to point out that those require special permitting. And so for instance, a cottage industry and home occupation is permitted with administrative permits throughout through most of the residential zones, not all of them. And then a cottage industry would require a conditional use permit. Bed and breakfast establishments, they do not require conditional use permits. They are administrative permits.
Melissa, would you comment on what a home occupation is as opposed to a cottage industry? I think you're pretty well qualified to do that. I know what it is.
This is a good discussion. Home occupations are basically those that are just occur in the home. There's no additional traffic. There are no deliveries or no employees. It's, you know, the person or persons living there. It's their, just what it says, their home occupation. So there's no signage. There's no obvious change to the character of the area versus a cottage industry is a little bit more intense, where that may have up to 3 employees. There could be deliveries. Small signage would be allowed. And that's why a cottage industry, because it's a more intense use, requires a conditional use permit. And if you recall, that's a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission to make sure that it meets the standards. And there are standards in the zoning ordinance related to both of those types of uses. And I'm happy to get into some of the details if we need to, or I can send them out later if you all are interested in taking a look at those. So these goals, rather the policies that are under this goal, refer to, and there are 2 here, primarily those home occupations and cottage industries. So rather the the more intense residential uses, or the residential uses that are a bit beyond normal residential uses in those zones. That's what this section is referring to.
Any comments from the committee on the goal?
Just one thing on the cottage industries. I will tell you that they get scrutinized extremely closely when they come to the Planning and Zoning Commission, because that is a conditional use permit, and it does not go on to the Board of Supervisors unless the decision of the P and Z Commission is appealed. Just some information for you.
Thank you, John. Any other committee member comment on the goal?
This is Evelyn. I just wanted to ask Melissa if home occupation and cottage industries are in the glossary.
They are in our zoning ordinance definition section.
Yeah, but for this planning.
I don't believe they have been put, I don't believe they're in the existing glossary, and
it'd be nice because if somebody is reading this, they don't have to go to the planning one. They can look in our glossary and see what we mean.
Okay, we can make a note of that.
That's a good suggestion, Evelyn. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll certainly go along with that, because other jurisdictions do this. They have very thorough glossaries or definitions as a part of them.
Okay, let's move.
Yeah, I'm looking in your current glossary. They are not in the current glossary, so I'll make a note here.
Could we add an LU 19 should be reviewed with impact on roads, amount of traffic, dust, lighting, noise, water? Could we add odors to the neighborhood? Existing odors, or not existing odors, but
Bernice, could you hold on to that? I think that's a good comment. I was wanting to go to LU 18 first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I jumped.
No reason to apologize. Your comment is on track.
Okay.
So commercial in residential zone policies, LU 18. Do you want me to read it out loud, folks? We have people on the phone. Let me read it. The county should continue to allow home occupations and cottage industries with appropriate conditions stipulated to ensure that the neighborhood rural character is preserved, that such uses are incidental to the residential use and do not change the residential character. The standards for home occupation should be vigorously enforced. Comments?
I would question what that last sentence means.
I'm not sure what it means either, Rob.
I agree with it, I think, but I'm not exactly sure what it means and what those standards are.
Well,
so if I can go ahead, John, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say that really is covered by the zoning ordinance pretty thoroughly, but you know, the rigorous enforcement probably doesn't need to be in there. You know, of course, everybody would like to see that, but having dealt with game processing, which is a cottage industry, then I know that there have been problems that have come along that have been raised about this in Doney Park, and it's been the Planning and Zoning Commission that has taken those complaints and problems and gone forward with trying to solve them, just in terms of allowing the permit to continue.
And if I could just clarify that, then the home occupation is an administrative permit. So it does not require planning commission approval. It does require a permit be issued by county staff, and there are performance standards that it has to meet.
Yeah, and
So,
that is the same for cottage industries. I was getting ahead of this a little bit and talking about cottage industries.
mm-hmm. And a cottage industry is a CUP. It is a public hearing.
Right.
With, yeah.
What recourse does the residential neighborhood have if there's a problem with a home occupation?
Well, and
that
I think, yeah, I think that's what
the
this is speaking
administrative
to. That would be a zoning enforcement matter at that point.
So should it read zoning, the standards for a zoning enforcement should be enforced for all home occupations?
Isn't that a given?
Well, that's
It is.
given, yes. It essentially is already part of the zoning ordinance.
So I would say we could strike the second sentence, or if somebody is adamant about it, put a reference to the, what do I want to say, the zoning code.
Either way,
Comments from the committee?
I agree with you.
So one of the things is that they have to renew these cottage industry things from time to time. And if the person isn't performing, then the neighborhood can show up at the meeting and state they're not performing to what they need to do. And that in my past, that's held weight with the planning and zoning.
Yes, and we have had to deal with that exact thing in the past.
I believe most CUPs are issued for 5 years, and every 5 years would then need to be renewed. And when they are renewed, they go in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and there's plenty of opportunity for public comment. So if there are problems with the applicant maintaining compliance with the terms that were placed on them, that's where it would be identified. And the Planning and Zoning Commission then would decide whether or not to renew that CUP.
Actually, for a cottage industry, I think it's 3 years. And we have in the past gone with lower terms for other uses that are not considered a cottage industry when it's questionable about the impact on the surrounding properties in the neighborhood.
So coming back to the policy itself, do we include the last statement that Melissa has highlighted, or do we delete it?
I could just also mention, Brian, the last section of this chapter or element is related to zoning enforcement.
I would suggest that there's no real value in the last sentence
Yeah.
that's highlighted now.
Rob's absolutely right about that.
Well, I think Rob was the first one to bring it up. No, I got to admit, I didn't know what it meant when I read it.
Hey, maybe I can be the last one to agree with him then.
Okay. Let's strike that comment, please. Comments from the committee before moving to LU 19? Okay, Bernice, you had a comment on LU 19.
Yes, I would like to add odors and if you can think of any other noxious, whether it's using chemicals that are toxic or like butane processing of marijuana. There's marijuana processing has a lot of odors that go with it and toxins, and it doesn't have to be marijuana. It could be any kind of business that uses a lot of chemicals that might be hazardous.
And if I could just point out, this is specific to a cottage industry in a residential zone. And I'm thinking what you're thinking about referring to, Bernice, is more of an industrial use, which would not be allowed in a residential zone. Just to kind of make sure that we're thinking about what is a cottage industry.
Hey, Melissa, just to kind of address what Bernice is talking about, could we say hazardous materials?
Hey, Rob, that's a very good idea, because this is also something that has been considered by the Planning and Zoning Commission in years past.
So hazardous materials would include those kinds of chemicals and things that Bernice has brought up, and without being too specific.
How about noxious odors and hazardous materials?
Well, odor, I don't know. It's kind of hard to define odor, much less noxious odor.
Who's going to make a list of noxious?
And my concern is, I mean, you're getting to a litany of specific comments, and then somebody comes in and says, well, you didn't exclude, you know, this other one. So I'm wondering if a more general statement, something to the effect of, oh, how am I going to say this? Should be reviewed with impact on community character, including traffic, including but not limited to.
Yeah.
Yeah, the use of including but not limited to is a good way to deal with this. And one other thing, the list of problems is basically a list of what are referred to as common law nuisances. Noise would be a common law nuisance because we do not have a zoning code section dealing specifically with noise and specifying the levels. So it's still a common law nuisance.
Can we use that phrase, John, in place of trying to itemize every item?
Well, it's going to vary depending on whose case law you pick up when you start talking about common law nuisances. So I think it's best to leave it like it is.
I still would like to add odors and hazardous materials and keep noise in there.
Yeah, I think Bernice is absolutely right. Even though that is something that does get considered at the P&Z level, nevertheless, having it in here tells you, hey, that's one of the things you have to look at or should look at, or you better look at.
Okay. Let me go to other members of the committee who have commented on this. Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, are we happy with LU 19? Hearing no comments, LU 19 is adopted. Let's move on to industrial goal. Let me ask this, Melissa, before we go on. Were there any other categories within the cottage industry theater that need to be included that haven't been included?
Well, cottage industry is a land use. It's a type of land use just in and of itself.
Right. Well, if you'll scroll back up maybe to the goal, my question really is there anything else that belongs here that we have not covered? That's my question. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think.
Everybody answered my question in silence. Melissa.
I think that everything is in terms of non-residential uses in residential zones. Just looking at the land use table, you know, there are obviously some that are conditional use permits, and these are really specific that address these non-residential uses that are currently allowed under the zoning ordinance. So it's fairly specific to what would be looked at when those permits are up for review. I don't know of anything else that you would need to address.
I'll go along with Melissa on that. She's right.
And the second sentence in LU 19, commercial uses that have a high impact, such as feed stores and animal hospitals, should generally be located along arterial roadways. That gets even more specific into where those types of uses should be cited.
Right. Okay,
So I think it's pretty well covered here. Unless
you.
you wanted to read through the use of commercial uses allowed in residential zones with a conditional use permit. And if we wanted to do that, then I would suggest we jump into the zoning ordinance, but that may not be necessary at this point.
Do any of the county employees have a perspective on what Melissa just shared? Hearing none, let's move on to industrial goal.
Okay, so the goal is industrial uses are restricted to existing industrial zoned areas. And I just would add that Liz Baldwin was out on Loop Road over the weekend and sent a number of great photos. If you all haven't been out there, then I do highly recommend that you take a drive and go on Loop Road and look at the industrial section of this area plan.
That's one of 2 major industrial areas, right?
Yeah, there's another one. It's this guy that runs a firearms center somewhere.
That's commercial. That is commercial zoning.
The other one is out at I-40 and Loop Road, or I mean in Townsend, Winona.
Yep.
Yeah, that is commercial, Rob. Okay. Industrial policies, land use 20, rezonings to industrial should be considered only if abutting existing industrial zoning exists.
No, it just
Only-
says existing industrial. Here, I can
Yeah.
take off track changes.
Um,
Sorry. There you go.
Only
That
if
might
a-
be easier to read.
rezonings to industrial should be considered only if abutting existing industrial zoning.
Isn't that in conflict with the goal?
Are restricted to existing industrial.
Yeah.
What it's saying is that commercial or potentially residential land could be rezoned to be industrial. Is that accurate? Is that what it's saying?
Exactly. So do we want more of that, or do we figure there's enough in it and QED done?
Well, I'll add a little complication to this. If you go out Loop
Of
Road, as has been
course.
suggested, yes, you have some residentially zoned property out there that is literally surrounded by industrial. It dates back, this occurred as a result of what occurred before the zoning ordinance was adopted the first time around. So you have a case like that, you could make pretty good case for rezoning that parcel of property to industrial. It would be, it would match all of the rest of the industrial surrounding it. Other than that, though, that is definitely not something you want to do in terms of increasing industrial zoning. So you have to kind of think about these cases where it's something a little bit out of the ordinary.
That makes sense. Thanks.
What if we said abutted on all sides rather than just having it be like abutting on one side? You know, it could be residential, you know, down the road. If we were to limit it, I feel strongly that we don't want to add more commercial or industrial. We want to use the existing industrial zoned areas without creating more and creating more density and traffic.
Are you saying where, if you see where Melissa's cursor is, surrounded by, only if surrounded by existing industrial zoning?
Well, again, it's a similar case to what I just
Yeah, it is.
described to you. Surrounded, you would eliminate someone who is not entirely surrounded. If you have industrial on one side of, say, Loop Road, and on the other side, you happen to have heavy commercial, then you're saying, oh, well, that's a sufficient case to not grant the zoning to bring that one surrounded lot on one side of the road
Yeah.
into compliance with the rest of the area. So you're probably going to have very, very few cases like that.
I would tend to think that Monica nailed it from the beginning here.
I think she did.
If we're trying to limit it to existing industrial zoned areas, why is the very first thing we do mention how you do it somewhere else?
Yeah.
I don't know what LU20, what value LU20 provides.
I would like to remove it.
Yeah, because otherwise you're going to have to say something like you don't want to do any more zoning. So taking that out would be very appropriate considering the consensus here.
Other committee comments?
Our committee sure is quiet, except for a few people here. I would sure hope or encourage them to share their thoughts too, you know?
I'm nudging them. Maybe I need to push. Dave?
Yeah, yeah, it seems to me like there will, in the future, have some place where everybody really wants to rezone it to industrial. You know, it's like right next door to an industrial thing, and if everybody's, you know, if it meets a lot of the other requirements. But if we take that out, it's basically, you know, hey, what's there is there, you can't grow it.
Which is kind of what we want, right, Dave?
Well, I don't know, not necessarily.
That's what the survey wants.
I would have to agree with Bernice on that. It doesn't prevent you from requesting rezoning or zoning change. It just says to the P&Z Commission that you really have to consider what the community wants. And what that does anyway, the P&Z Commission only sends a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So you got a couple of opportunities to fight it and fight it very effectively.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that we remove LU20.
I'd vote for that.
Yep.
Other committee comments?
Nope.
Monica, yes or no?
Oh, sorry, I did a happy dance. It's just easier on these meetings not to comment if you're in agreement.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's some of the silence.
Good point, Monica.
Silence is complicity then.
Not always. Sometimes I say the best things when I am silent. Let's remove LU20. The new LU20, only low water using industrial facilities not exceeding 25,000 gallons of water per month should be encouraged. Committee comments?
That's a.
How about?
I think that one's darn important around here.
How about should be considered?
That's a better phrase. Other committee comments?
I'm concerned about the number 25,000. You know, what seemed right in 2000 when this was originally drafted might seem like a lot today and might seem like a lot more in 10 years from now. So putting a number in here right now, I think could arbitrarily allow things that maybe wouldn't make sense 10 years from now. And I would like to see it read or state more of a statement that says, you know, low water use should be, you know, a primary consideration for these kinds of activities, but assigning a value to it, I think boxes us in ways that we don't need to be.
Good point, Rob.
I'll go along with you on that, Rob.
That's how it would look.
That's even better. Only low water using industrial facilities should be considered.
And now low will be determined based on current conditions, whatever that might be. And I like
Correct. It becomes a relative term to the time.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to do it because in some cases in the past, we have had applicants come forward and say, yeah, Doney Park Water says this is something that they can supply without regard to that 25,000 gallons per month or whatever. And in the future, you know, that could change, just as Rob has pointed out.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, LU 21, design review overlay standards for industrial zones shall be strictly adhered to. Isn't that a requirement anyway?
It is, and that's why the word shall is still in here for this one.
Okay.
So what's the value of having this here if it's an existing requirement?
I think it puts people on notice
That
that
the
the design
DRO
review
exists?
overlay applies.
Yeah, okay.
Committee comments on 21? Let's go to 22. Environmental impact should be carefully considered in reviewing new industrial projects. Committee comments?
This is Evelyn. What does planning and zoning say on that?
So what do you mean? Do you mean when the Planning and Zoning Commission is reviewing projects, or?
Is that something they already consider, or?
Well, these policies would come into play during conditional use permit review, rezoning requests. And so, yeah, these policies will be looked at for those types of projects.
Yeah, but like the one above it, you said it's already in there. So.
Right, because design review overlay is actually for projects that don't require a conditional use permit. In industrial zones, they are still subject to design review overlay, which is a Planning and Zoning Commission approval. So it's a bit different. The use is permitted, but the design standards still apply.
Okay.
And that's actually a zoning ordinance requirement. Environmental impacts are not necessarily looked at with design review standards. However, they would be looked at with conditional use permits, for instance.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
That was a good question, Evelyn.
I don't know if I'm allowed to comment because I'm not on the committee, but I missed part of the meeting. I was wondering, am I not supposed to comment?
That is correct, Deanna.
Okay.
We will take public comment again at the end, so we'll look forward to hearing from you at that point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's go to 23. For industrial uses requiring a conditional use permit, at a minimum, the following concerns and impacts should be considered: roads, traffic, dust, visual impact, infrastructure, fire protection, odor, lighting, and hazardous materials. And that does say at a minimum, the following will be considered.
Given the water situation, should we throw something in there about considering water availability?
I would agree with that.
That's
So you
what
have that
LU
in number
20 is all
20.
about.
Yeah, you've got that right above.
Yeah, it's
That is
already
true.
in there.
Okay,
That's true. It is in number 20.
okay.
What about discharges into the aquifer? Discharges into septic systems, sizes of septic systems.
Well, the
What-
discharge into the septic system can't exceed the input from the water system, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that the discharge from the septic system is going to be your leach field. And that's controlled by the county already via your building permit.
Yeah, it depends on the type of septic system you're using. And yes, just like Brian says, that is the purview of the environmental quality folks at the county.
And when we're reviewing conditional use permits, comments from environmental quality are taken into consideration. And they're looking at those in terms of the sizing and siting of the systems.
Yep. Yeah.
To make sure that there's enough room for the adequate and to adequately size those.
Yeah. And the type, the type of system also. So.
Right.
And Bernice, to come back to you, discharging into the Rio de Flag period is illegal. I believe it's illegal. So I don't
You
think
may want to look at number 24 just below that.
Okay, 24, information about permits required from the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality and other applicable permits for industrial uses that would inform the county of, that would inform the community about potential hazards should be submitted to the county with the rezoning or conditional use application. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, and with a conditional use permit, that that certainly is always a condition of approval. You don't get to go forward until you got that most of the time.
That seems to be a pretty tight set of industrial policies. I don't know. I'm trying to think of how someone could get around them, and I'm not coming up with any mechanism other than, they bury a pipeline and have it seep out some
Well, I
100
think you're
yards from their
talking
property.
a violation at that point.
Yes, you are. Absolutely.
You're not nearly nefarious enough, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay.
They cheat very creatively sometimes.
Well, I'm sure that's true, but I mean, that's it. It would be, what I'm saying is the policy, I think the policies are fairly coherent with each other. And I don't see any other changes that need to be made.
Yeah.
And I'm open to committee comment.
Agree.
Brian, I would agree with you, and the other outside laws and ordinances and regulations adequately address this also. So I think we've got a good capture of what our community would want to see in this document.
And if I recall, the subcommittee that looked at this initially really thought hard about number 24. And with the idea that this is a request to look at those other permits so the community is informed about what those would be permitting.
Melissa, we'll move on to public and semi-public goal. And before I do that, are folks wanting to take a short break to either use the restroom or get something to nibble on? How much more do we have to go with this? I should ask that.
Okay, so I'll just scan down. Here's the public and semi-public goal. And then zoning enforcement, and then we're done. So we're nearly at the end of this section.
And
of
then
this chapter.
comment.
Do you want to continue and get this section completed before taking a break?
Sure.
Okay. Let's press on. Public and semi-public goal. Public and semi-public uses are compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhood and comply with design review overlay guidelines. Comments on the goal?
You know, Melissa, perhaps it would be beneficial if you defined what public and semi-public goal or public and semi-public means here.
Sure, I can give you some examples.
Well, we want the definition, really. I'm sorry, that sounded
Okay.
rude, but
That's all right.
No, I agree, because like if somebody's just reading this, what does it mean?
And public and semi-public goal is something that probably ought to, you know, public and semi-public ought to be in our glossary, I think.
Okay. Right.
That's a good
And
point.
so what I would do, I'm looking, we do not actually have a definition in our zoning ordinance. We have a list of uses. So for instance, public, and in the zoning ordinance, they were termed quasi-public uses are things like airports and heliports, animal shelters, care centers for child and adults, cemeteries, community centers, educational institutions, that would be schools and such, fire stations, hospitals, landfill, libraries, park and ride facilities. So those are some examples of public and either semi-public or quasi-public uses. We would, I don't believe there's a current definition in this glossary. So we would need to come up with one, but generally they are just those types of uses that really serve the public. They are not commercial uses. There are generally no sales out of them. They're care facilities. They provide services to the community, either for health purposes, educational, things like
So
that.
there isn't a requirement that they be publicly owned. They can be privately owned, but
correct.
Okay.
And I'm looking in our comprehensive plan just to see if there's a definition there. Okay, in the comprehensive plan, it reads semi-public, semi-public uses listed in the Coconino County zoning ordinance, such as daycare centers, preschools, hospitals, churches, educational institutions, libraries and museum, public parks, recreational facilities, and utilities. So it kind of bounces back to the zoning ordinance. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
So is it defined in our plan? I mean, in the glossary?
It's not in the current glossary. What I just read to you is from the comprehensive plan.
So can we put those in?
But again, that could be added to the glossary, of course.
Absolutely.
I agree. Are we ready to move on? LU 25, proposed public and semi-public uses shall include adequate landscaping, buffering, and other site improvements to mitigate possible impacts on the surrounding neighborhood.
Okay, you already have that as a provision of the zoning ordinance. And the other problem is shall. It doesn't add anything to this. You can say should, but it's already covered in the zoning ordinance.
Like in that other one, if it was covered, the overlay thing was covered, so Melissa changed.
So I would like to pose a question here, and we have a local situation where Supervisor Vasquez has suggested that there's alternative uses for the flood control parcel, that 80-acre parcel just north of Copeland. And I'm wondering how this particular statement plays into something like that. So if he were, he had suggested something like a soccer field or something like that. Is that something we want? Is that something this statement supports? And how do we as a committee feel about that?
Okay, in a case like that, I think you'd want to say should include. And that would allow you to add even more things than that if you wanted to.
If a soccer field was placed over there, wouldn't there have to be a parking lot too? I've heard of people that are very concerned that live over in that area that they don't want more traffic and that type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There would have to be parking. There would have to be, you know, a variety of infrastructure improvements there if something like that were to happen. And I think it's important here that we, you know, keep in mind what the results of the survey said, what we would expect if we were neighbors on that piece of property, what we would want to see, and those kinds of things. And I think it's important, especially considering, you know, these kinds of uses are being currently considered, that we address that here in this particular section.
Okay, one other comment on that. When something like this, if it were to be implemented, would in all likelihood be under the purview of Parks and Rec. And they have to come forward and request a conditional use permit for something like this. We went through this with Parks and Rec in relation to the current development plans for the Parks and Rec facilities south of us, south of town down there.
That's right. The that parcel is zoned AR, I believe, and a park, whether it's public or private, is a conditional use permit. So that would be something that the county would need to handle in that manner. And keep in mind that parcel is primarily for flood control. And so the uses are pretty limited in terms of what could be done there, so that it didn't impact the ability of that basin to function as that flood control system.
And Supervisor Vasquez indicated to me that he's exploring options to make, you know, even up to the federal level of how they can expand the opportunities to use that property. So I think it's important that we make sure that we're, you know, respecting our neighbors here and addressing that while at the same time protecting the opportunity that exists for this property to be, you know, more of an asset to our community.
And actually, one other thing, I think since this is already covered by the zoning ordinance in terms of landscaping, buffering, and other improvements, you could actually make a case for leaving shall in there.
And that's why it is there, John, because those are required.
Let me interject real quick. I'm hearing some background noises. If you have not muted yourself, please do so. Thank you. Coming back to the conversation, I'm hearing that this is already covered in the planning and zoning, but I'm feeling that there's good reason to keep it here, again, to inform the public of, you know, the residents of Doney Park, Timberline, and Fernwood of what it is we're expecting from planning and zoning or other decision makers.
I'll agree with Brian on this. I think it's a very good thing to have in here as a goal and a policy relating to that goal. It does draw attention to it. And the other thing is possible impacts. I don't even think you need the word possible in there. That says, to me, if you take possible out, just all the impacts, you've got to consider everything that the neighbors bring up.
Good point.
Rob Wilson and I kind of have this almost in our backyard, so we're aware of some of the problems that could arise from use as a public or semi-public facility.
How does that look?
I agree with it.
Very
Any
good.
other comments from the committee?
I have a question. That area that we're talking about, that 80 acres, is it even possible right now to try to build something, well, like soccer field, blah, blah, blah? Is it possible to even do that right now since it's already designated as a flood control thing?
I don't think we know yet.
Oh, okay.
I think that's what they're investigating, Evelyn, is what the possibilities are in order to use that for something else.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, actually, right now, my understanding is no, it's not. The federal government, when they authorized the county to designate that and paid for, I think, that property, it was, as a result, restricted specifically to that flood control use. And Supervisor Vasquez is exploring, and apparently there are ways to, through a legislative process, authorize additional uses for that property. And to what scale or use, to what scope is yet to be determined.
Yeah, my understanding of it is exactly the same as what Rob has just described.
And I wanted to just mention that in the natural environment, open space, trails, and recreation element that we have reviewed, there is a goal in there to encourage the development and maintenance of recreation, social, and community gathering spaces throughout the planning area. And then a policy related to that speaks to that parcel specifically. And it says, and it's number 22, county-owned parcels could be utilized for recreational purposes within the community, such as developing the flood control basin parcel. So that's a policy in this other chapter that addresses their complementary policies here.
So LU 25 does a pretty good job of, if we decide to use that or if we get permission to use it in another way, we are going to make sure that we mitigate the impacts on any of the surrounding neighbors.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to keep this in here, even though those are required buffering and landscaping requirements for public and semi-public uses in general. Yeah.
I agree.
I have a question that it's probably too late to consider, but I wonder if we were to pose that to the residents of what would you like to be seen done or left alone? And what would the residents think of that?
I don't think it's too late at all. And I think that the public comment periods, the open houses, that would be a great question to include.
Yeah, because I know, I mean, there's going to be a lot of different ideas about it. And I think it should kind of go up to the people, because if, some people would rather not see anything there, then I think it should go with what the residents want.
I agree.
That's, Evelyn, that's a great idea. And I agree with Rob that the public open houses would be a good place to bring that up.
And we have already had some comments about that, people were pretty good about saying, yeah, it'd be nice to keep it as open space so far.
Let's move on to, any other comments on LU 25? Let's move to LU 26. Rural Activity Center number 3, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, Cromer School?
Correct.
Should be reserved for public and semi-public and institutional uses such as governmental facilities and schools.
What does it mean should be reserved?
That no other type of activity can go on there. In other words, only public and semi-public and institutional uses can be conducted on that government facility. Is that accurate?
Could a government facility be a jail or a correctional, a juvenile facility?
Those are not allowed uses based on our zoning ordinance. And just reading through that, I don't think we actually even have those listed here.
What type of government facilities?
Well, a fire station,
Hate
the
myself for saying this,
schools.
but
Substation for the sheriff's office.
Hmm.
how about a jail? Or a prison?
Well, those are not land uses that are actually listed.
That's good.
We don't have correctional institution listed
Now,
in our zoning ordinance.
just consider that, of course, this is essentially a recommendation on how to proceed. You'd have to change existing zoning and go from there. A lot of pretty high hurdles to jump to get changes from what you have right now.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the school is still zoned AR.
Okay,
I need to look that up. I believe it is zoned residential.
yeah, if
I don't
you pull up the
I'm
zoning
looking
map.
right now. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's not convenient for me to pull up on the computer.
What
Keep
about
talking.
a parole? What about a parole office or a probation office?
Well, again, those get back to the land uses, and offices are not land uses permitted in residential zones. But let me just double check the zoning on that piece. And by the way, Liz Baldwin is trying to call in, but I don't know that she has not been successful yet. Okay. Yes, the school is still zoned agricultural residential, 2.5 acre minimum.
And it is a rural activity center. So it would have to go through a zoning change in order for any other development to happen. Is that accurate?
Well, so for instance, right now in agricultural residential zoning, the public and quasi-public uses are those that I started reading earlier: airports, animal shelters, care centers. So, and most of these require conditional use permits. Educational institutions, fire stations, hospitals. Actually, a landfill is not an AR, that's only allowed in the G zone. Libraries, park and ride facilities, parks, outdoor recreation facilities, religious institutions, and a utility facility, which is a, basically energy. So those are conditional use permits. No mention of a correctional institution or offices under the public, quasi-public land uses. Does that help?
It does. My head is kind of swimming in all the different
The
possible
technicalities,
uses.
yeah.
It sounds though, it sounds from my reading that LU 26 fits the need for what we're trying to express.
Would it help if I called the map up?
I don't think it makes any difference from my perspective.
Mine either. I think it's covered elsewhere as much as we can.
Yeah.
And the other thing about it is this is a rather unique activity center in that respect. And this, what we've got here really lays that out fairly well, I think.
For me.
Any other comments from the committee? LU 26 is adopted.
Okay.
Let's move to zoning enforcement goal.
And this is the last section in this element. And so there are 4 policies under here,
Okay,
just to show you where they end. Okay, so the goal, there was one goal under zoning enforcement. Did you want to read that?
sure. The goal is achieve compliance with the provisions of the Coconino County zoning ordinance to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of residents, to improve the appearance of the community, and to enhance property values throughout the community. Questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, let's move on to the policies. LU 27, protect the character of the planning area by enforcing provisions of the zoning ordinance across the community, applied in a consistent, fair, safe, and supportive process for complainants. For complainants
Yes, those are the people that have the concern.
that are filing a complaint.
Correct.
Shouldn't it be fair to everyone?
Should be. Complainants and other residents.
Or for all?
Well, what I'm hearing, why I think that's important, Rob, is that it then protects the individual. Let's say that you live next to me and I'm outside at 3 o'clock in the morning with my rock and roll and chainsaw, you know. I just made that up.
No, I agree.
Well, and if I recall from the subcommittee that reviewed it, there was a concern that sometimes people have not felt safe in calling in on their neighbor. So that was, yeah.
And I think it's important to note that anonymous complaints are not allowed.
We are the only county that does not allow anonymous complaints, and the city of Flagstaff allows it. I think we ought to come in line with protecting people that are making complaints so that they don't have to feel intimidated.
And Bernice, that might be a great idea, but unfortunately, I think it's outside the scope of what we're doing here this evening.
Yeah.
But I think this particular goal or policy, excuse me, should say that it's a supportive process for both sides, that we're fair to everyone involved.
So for complainants and the community, is that what I'm hearing?
I prefer that because I think that there should be some mention of support for the complainant so that they know that they're entitled to support from the county.
Melissa, can you take that down? That's just a little bit so I can see the goals. There you go.
Actually, complainant versus complainant. Complainant is a legal term, and complainant is not.
I'm not sure.
Which would be the better one, Dave?
I think complainant is the one that is someone who has legal authority to make a complaint. That's what I just looked it up on Google.
Okay.
It says, shoot. Oh, here it is. Complainant or complainant. Complainer is a person who complains at familiar sets. Complainant, without the T and second T in there, is a legal term and refers to a person who files a formal complaint or accusation in a court of law. So perhaps someone who's not, pursuing it into legal effect is actually a complainant. Or a complaint, but I'm not a lawyer enough to figure out which should be.
And perhaps we should ask for legal advice on that from the county attorney's office if that's necessary.
I wouldn't want to show up there as the wrong kind of person and they say, hey, this isn't a court, get out of here.
Well, there is though, when somebody does call in and file a complaint with the county, then that does become an action that the county takes. It's a matter that the county takes action on. So it's not in court. Sometimes they do get elevated to that level if they are not resolved. But essentially it is then a formal complaint at the county level that we do look at.
Yeah, I think that's what we have to look at is formal versus informal. Because yeah, the court a lot, and that was Google, it was just a summary.
Wait a minute. Why not just say for all parties? A supportive process, safe and supportive process for all parties.
Yes.
Hey, works for me.
That takes care of that problem.
Yeah, I
All
would.
about parties.
So
like-
take out all this and put for all parties.
And I don't think you need to add any more after that.
Yeah, I think that actually is better.
It sounds more like our community.
Okay. Moving on to LU 28. Increase residents' awareness. Should that be possessive? Is it plural possessive?
Yes.
Okay. Increase residents' awareness of zoning regulations through community volunteer efforts to assist with enforcement activities and cleanup efforts and county-sponsored information events, such as neighborhood watch groups.
I think it would really help if we had actual zoning enforcement officers that could aid in the education of the people that are in violation. You know, we've been meeting for 1.5 years on this committee, and when we started, we didn't have any zoning enforcement officers, and we still don't. And what is the holdup on that?
There's only two people that can answer that here, and that would be Supervisor Begay and Supervisor Vasquez.
Yeah.
Well, and I will
agree
tell
with
you,
Rob.
we've been recruiting for a zoning enforcement officer and have just interviewed, made a job offer, and it was turned down. So it is a matter of recruitment in large part at this point and getting people interested.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe we need to pay, upgrade the job a little bit more since it's such a crucial, it could be such a crucial improvement to our communities with all the violations that we have.
Hey, Rob just told us who you need to talk to. So I'll tell you what, I've certainly lobbied members of the board for other things in the past. Put on your your hat and get down there to the Board of Supervisors, make an appointment, and let them know about it.
Well, could we let them know about it in this
I'm going
document?
to interject here because we're getting off topic.
Yep.
And Bernice, your point is right on. So I think it needs to be followed up the Board of Supervisors.
Well, I think, isn't there something we could put in this document?
No.
I think it
It's a
pretty well
zoning
says it all.
enforcement policy.
Bernice,
The county should employ, adequate personnel to be able to enforce the zoning code.
well, yeah, but let's get back to what it says right here. It mentions neighborhood watch groups, and one of the things that those have done in the past is for people who attend the neighborhood watches to say to John Paxton, hey, look, let's get somebody from zoning enforcement at the next meeting to talk about how we deal with code violations. If we had somebody, yes, we've certainly done that. I'm thinking back a number of years. We even had the county attorney at the Timberline Fernwood neighborhood watch some years ago to talk about what constitutes trespassing and how do we deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's what the purpose of the neighborhood watch meetings is.
I'm
So-
curious, I agree with you, John, and I'm curious though on the statement here that says that through community volunteer efforts to assist with enforcement. I don't think community volunteers can assist with enforcement. I think there's a contradiction there. I think they can contribute to information, awareness, those kinds of things, but I think enforcement is the wrong word to use there.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Rob. Completely.
Okay. Let me diverge real quickly. I want to recognize that Supervisor Vasquez has joined us. I'd like to complete this section and then come back to Supervisor Vasquez to see if he has anything he'd like to share.
How about the, let's say we've got efforts to assist with enforcement activities. How about assist with involvement in, well, I don't know. Going to be a hard one to wordsmith, I think.
Something about the volunteers would advise the enforcement people things that need to be kind of like what we do at the neighborhood watch, but in this case, a community volunteer would advise the sheriff or whoever of what's going on. Rather than assist, it would be more like an advisement type thing.
Evelyn, I'm thinking that this is more about making our neighbors aware of the regulations and not
should be
watching our neighbors and being and turning them in kind of a thing. And I'm all about helping my neighbors understand what the regulations are. And then if they choose not to follow them, then that's up to them to suffer the consequences for that decision.
Right.
I don't think we want to encourage people watching their neighbors and turning them in for things. I don't know.
And for sure, we have to take on enforcement activities.
No, they're not. I don't think they're wanting to take on enforcement activities. You know, if an enforcement activity says they got to tear down an illegal fence, and someone comes out and says, "Hey, I can help you with that," that's and the same thing with cleanup efforts. You know, hey,
I'm visualizing things like lighting issues right now. There's lots of lighting violations out here in Doney Park right now.
Oh yeah.
And I think there are a lot of our neighbors who probably are not aware of the lighting ordinance as it exists today. And if they were made aware of that through a friendly neighborhood visit, might very well choose to comply with that.
So
go ahead, Brian.
Thank you. I have a suggestion, something to the effect, the county should provide the resources to help educate the community as to the needs and regulations and the zoning regulations, and help, how shall I say this? In other words, the county needs to provide the resources to educate the people, and in the process can also stimulate cleanup efforts and other activities that support our community character. And I'm trying to tie it back to our goal, our visions at the beginning. That's where I'm trying to go with this.
So what you're kind of trying to say is that the volunteers would like go to someone who's got a zoning regulation offense and gently let them know the way the zoning exists, and then offer, well, if you need help type of thing. Is that what you're saying?
It could be. What I'm saying is that the county provides information and resources to help educate, to better educate our region residents so that they can be in compliance. And then the next part would be that, I suppose, volunteers. But I want to tie it in so it doesn't put volunteers in an enforcement.
I think that's important.
I sort of think the neighborhood watch meetings are something that the county works on really.
Yeah, that's why it's cited here.
It's just the problem of getting people to the neighborhood watch groups to learn something.
I have an example of this, and it's the dark skies thing. And this, the homeowners association that I happen to be in is not interested in telling people about the dark skies requirements. And there's lights all over the place. And I've changed mine to dark lights, and I've mentioned it to a couple of people and say, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. Period. So it's they're trying that this would call for this particular thing would call for somebody, I think, from the county looking and saying, you really ought to do something about all that light that's coming out of your neighborhood.
Hey, Dave, would it work if we, and Melissa, perhaps if you started at the end of efforts there and took out from to assist with and all that until we got to such as, so we're doing this in an advisory role kind of a thing. Starting with the two right there. Yep. And through events. Take that out and then does that's what I think this was kind of intended to do. We want to be neighbors. We want to be able to go next door and say, hey, I'm not sure if you knew, but whatever this particular thing you're doing is, isn't really legal, and you might want to change that. I want to be neighbors here.
Hey, Rob, how about saying such as, but not limited to?
Yeah.
That's another place you can use that. And that covers a lot of other bases.
Sure.
It does it without being specific like it was before.
Melissa, if you go back, I think John's comment, such as, but not limited to. Attending neighborhood watch group meetings.
Are there any other types of meetings that occur where that type of information could be disseminated?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh,
not really.
I will take you back to Mandy Metzger. She had consistently had speakers from the county and elsewhere that were offering information on numerous different aspects of living out here in Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood, etc.
Where and when did she do that, though? Was it at the neighborhood watch meetings or separate from that?
She was doing it both at the neighborhood watch meetings, but also at her coffees when she was county supervisor.
So not limited to works then.
Yes.
This sounds all well and good, but having people volunteer to enforce, we've got some scary people in our neighborhoods that have intimidated other neighbors, and these people are still in violation, and it's been about 2 years now, and the county never could do anything to bring them into compliance. And there are scary people, and I think that if we don't protect the people and have zoning enforcement officers that do their jobs like they do in every other city. I can't think of one besides Coconino County that does not allow anonymous complaints. I own a rental house in Phoenix. The zoning compliance officers, they drive the streets. I get a letter when my tenant leaves a mattress out 2 days ahead of the regulated time for the bulk pickup. And I mean, there's like a $25,000 fine. That we ought to be able to clean this up. And that was one of the things when I did the drive-by, the driving Doney Park and Timberline and all that. That's what I noticed the most. Number one was how beautiful our area is. Number two, how many zoning violations there are.
I think we're getting beyond the scope.
Here we are.
The area plan here with that.
Well,
What
this
is
is the
the,
goal
what is,
for zoning enforcement, and we should have policies that bring us into compliance.
and Bernice, how do you read LU 28 then? What is the intent of LU 28 as it existed before? Because my understanding of that is that we're a neighborhood and we want to first, if possible, share with our neighbors those things that they may not be aware of.
These
And
people
hope
are
that,
aware of it. They are aware of it. They are
okay.
flaunting because they
And-
can.
And I think LU 28 is only doing that first step of making people aware of something. And if they continue as a result of after being made aware of something to violate whatever that particular policy or ordinance or regulation is, that's where maybe we address further down here. But I would like to start things on a neighborly level where we can talk to each other and we can, I don't know, maybe I'm naive.
Some people you can't talk to. Some people you can't
And that's
talk
where
to.
you have to escalate it further down and
It's
change.
scary. Well, LU 28, to me, the intent of that was to protect the complainant.
That was the original writing of it. I agree with you there.
Well, and that's also in
That was
27. That's in number
27.
27.
Right,
Mhm.
okay, LU 27, I'm
Right.
sorry. That was to protect the
Yeah,
complainant.
first we're
I think
protecting
it's left
things,
as is.
then we're saying, let's talk to each other. And then I think the natural progression would be, if that doesn't work, first we've been protected to be able to make a statement. Then we've been encouraged to share that statement with our friends, our neighbors, or whatever. And then if that doesn't work, what's next?
You put a
That's
big
how I would like to
target on
see.
your back, you put a big target on your back and you file a complaint and you hope they don't burn your house down or hurt your animals.
Well, it sounds like if it's getting to that point, then
It's
that
getting
is,
that bad. Our neighbors were intimidated and they tried to force them to withdraw a complaint. And the complaint is still valid. It's never been rectified. And we need zoning officers and we need them to do their jobs. We shouldn't have to do their jobs. That's why
Brian?
we pay taxes.
Bernice, I regret having to cut you off. Let's try to stick to our goals and policies here. I know they're the stories. I don't doubt them. I'm looking at number 28 as an effort to educate people in the community of the zoning regulations. And that's achieved, that's more of through community volunteer efforts, that's more of a procedure than it is a policy. So I think is the focus of LU 28 to inform our community members of the zoning regulations?
I would agree with you, Brian.
And then
You're right.
is that the responsibility of the community members, or is that the responsibility of the county?
The way it works is it operates on a complaint basis. Now, this is not addressing, of course, the fact that we do not have code enforcement officers on the payroll right now. And that is something that is beyond the scope of this area plan to address. That goes further up. That goes beyond community development. That goes to the Board of Supervisors and the county's budget.
Okay. So trying to resolve LU 28, I think our focus needs to be, what if we delete the word volunteer through community efforts?
Yes.
And then we take the individual out. Does that accomplish what we want?
I think it sounds better.
Yeah, and boy, I'll tell you, when you are sitting on the dais at P&Z for something like a CUP or zoning change, you bet you can have a lot of community there to state their case about what you're doing. So just the community as a whole, I think, is a better way to address it.
It sounds more friendly too. It's kind of like the community's trying to help you out. If it's not going to work out, then there, you don't want to push it because you don't, like Bernice says, you don't want to end up having threats. So we're giving this, okay, through community efforts, like Rob says, help out your neighbor. But if you get a negative response, you don't want to go past that.
I don't think we want to encourage people to form a committee of vigilantes.
Right. We want to be friendly.
Does LU 28 now meet the need that we're trying to address?
Would it help to put a period after efforts? We only get like 5 people at our neighborhood watch meetings now. We don't get a whole lot of people.
Well, I will say that we have the same thing for Timberline Fernwood. However, the people that do attend have a tendency to talk to a number of other people. Mm-hmm. The word gets spread. It's like the multiplier effect of tourist dollars on the economy. Mm-hmm. Those 5 people just don't keep it to themselves.
Okay, how about increasing awareness of zoning regulations and include education from the zoning enforcement officers or office?
Well, that's actually what they do as a means of achieving compliance with the zoning code. That is a policy that community development has. It's not to be, we're going to take you to court right away. No, here's the idea is to inform somebody of what the zoning regulations require, and we're more interested in having you comply than trying to punish you.
Right, and it could be done by the Office of the Zoning Enforcement.
So
they do that already.
They're not doing it around here.
So
you don't have the people to do it. Yeah, it's going to work that way.
Is the issue here that we need to address in maybe a different policy that the county needs to provide the compliance officers?
Yes, yes.
Does that need to be included here?
That needs to be included, that we need compliance officers that are adequately paid to do their jobs.
Is it compliance or zoning enforcement?
Zoning enforcement.
Is zoning enforcement.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
How about zoning enforcement should be adequately supported by the county budget and hiring practices.
Haven't we had this discussion somewhere in a previous section? I'm sure that we have talked about that specifically. I agree that it should be supported. I agree that it's a legitimate and valid need. I don't think it belongs in LU 28. And I know that we've had a conversation about it before.
Well, I'm talking about a separate LU.
Yeah.
Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
LU 30. And zoning enforcement policies, that's the perfect place to say something about that. It's really a goal that Doney Park as a whole aspires to. Put more money in the budget, just like the sheriff's office. I know they'd like to have more money.
It shouldn't be just the county. Let's put the onus where it belongs. The county supervisors should ensure adequate resources are provided for zoning enforcement.
Yeah, just say Board of Supervisors. That's the normal term of art.
Sure, that's
the Board of Supervisors. Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy, there you go.
Add a D on provide. Excellent.
Everybody's happy?
Looks good.
Gets the point across.
Yeah,
I think that resolves the issue we were throwing darts at and not hitting the target. Okay, let's move on to LU, what is it, 30?
30.
Priority for enforcement should focus on neighborhood concerns, including but not limited to violation of the outdoor storage regulations and lighting trespass. It should be light trespass, shouldn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right, Brian, and that's a good statement to have in there about light trespass.
Yeah.
Man, I reviewed the survey again, and dark skies is one of the top concerns that people have.
Other committee members' comments on number 30.
I wonder whether it's appropriate to even decide today what the priorities should be for 10 years from now. Is it legitimate for us, while that is an issue, John, and I agree completely, it's an issue today. Should we, in this document that we know is going to be as a minimum in existence for 10 years and is currently existing for 20, to try to establish those kind of priorities? I think zoning enforcement should be zoning enforcement, period, personally.
I agree
Well,
with Rob.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Are you suggesting removing LU 30?
That would be my suggestion. I don't think that we need to prioritize one over the other. They're all equally considered under the law, and whatever the problem is at the time is what needs to be addressed.
Yeah, good way to go.
Let me go to other members of the committee for their comments. Any other committee comments? Okay, let's go to the last one. Was it?
Well, it would now be 30 again.
Yeah.
Okay. So county departments should cooperate with each other on the gathering of information on violations and on subsequent enforcement. This strategy could include surveys of non-compliant activities as well as legal non-conforming uses in order to monitor progress towards compliance and to supplement the enforcement program. Non-conforming uses should be monitored for any non-compliant or unauthorized expansions.
This doesn't make any sense at all to me. Sorry.
It's a bit convoluted, but it says that the county needs to do their job.
Yeah, and I understand Rob's point of view, and I'm looking at this after being in the middle of the planning and zoning business for so long, and I would say makes perfect sense to me, but it needs to make sense to everyone else first.
What, John, how do you read this, and what is it really saying in plain English?
That you need interdepartmental cooperation first. In other words, has a zoning compliant officer gone out in an effort to address a complaint, and then what happens when he's threatened? Okay, does the sheriff's office know that this person may be unstable or likely to assault the compliance officer? Looking at non-compliant activities, that would say that community development should perhaps have a record of with the property of complaints, very simply, in order to monitor progress towards compliance and supplement the enforcement program. And that's the kind of data you need. It's basically a message to the county and to community development saying, you guys need to consider this. You need to look at it. You need to develop a way to coordinate with everyone else. And it's not just the sheriff's office. It would be environmental quality. Might even be the library board, Dave.
So,
well, I understand the different organizations, but and that makes sense. But
to come back to your point, John, I think what you're saying is we need to reduce the complexity of this paragraph to say that there needs to be better cooperation between the different county offices involved in zoning enforcement?
Well, cooperation and coordination.
Okay.
I can tell you that this sometimes is an issue when we're working out what to do about access that Public Works has an input on.
Okay, so John, is what I said, is that on target for
Yes.
the state?
Hey, Brian,
Yes.
if we left that first sentence alone and then followed it with a sentence that said something to the effect of to ensure timely resolution of any violations.
I think that would do it.
You got it, Rob.
Doesn't that do it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is a legal non-conforming use? Wouldn't that be an illegal use?
No,
No.
Horseman's
Oh.
Lodge. Good example.
Things that are grandfathered.
Oh, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have something back to the first sentence there. I'm thinking about cooperate and coordinate.
Yeah, Dave's got the right word to add in there.
Coordinate.
Cooperate and coordinate.
And subsequent or information on violations, period.
On gathering information.
Yeah, gathering, not
Drop
gathering
the
of information. Yeah.
gathering information, yeah.
Oh,
And then to ensure, yeah, get rid of, there you go. And to ensure timely resolution of violations.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, you can just keep.
Well, we had to ensure in there twice.
Yeah,
So
you
gather
can
information on violations and subsequent enforcement to ensure.
Nope, you don't even need to do that. Get that out of there.
This.
Right to there, yep. That's what we're asking for, right?
And the rest of this goes away.
Exactly.
Yep. Very sweet and to the point.
That's much cleaner.
Yes.
Plain English.
Yeah, you don't have to be a planner or.
It's only slightly worse.
Understand it.
Only slightly more complicated than do your job.
Are there other committee members who haven't commented that want to comment on this policy?
Melissa, can you go back up to 29? Oh, what was there?
So 29 is a new
That was the
one.
originally that was the priority for enforcement should
Yeah.
focus on neighborhood concerns, whatever. And we said the priority is whatever the priority is. It isn't something we can define today for 10 to 15 years from now.
Okay.
Is that what you're looking at, Evelyn?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. I just wanted to see it again.
I will share with you, Rob, there's a historic context for the outdoor storage regulations that we don't need to get into, but I understand why that was included 20 years ago.
Sure.
But I'm just kind of wondering if something like priority for enforcement should focus on the residents' concerns.
I think we decided to drop the idea of prioritizing anything.
Well, not say priority, not give a priority, just say that the enforcement should, I guess they'd be looking at what the residents want anyway, not so much coming up with their own.
I like that
Right.
idea, but I'm not sure how you would identify what it is.
It's kind of like what, what Bernice says, okay, they have their concerns, but would those concerns that they're having to deal with be the same as what a particular resident is having a concern about because they see it every day? So priority for enforcement should focus on the residents' concerns.
Well, isn't that what it's intended to do from the beginning? If you say prioritize anything, you could say that if we had proactive zoning enforcement on the part of community development, where the zoning enforcement people went out looking for violations. This is community driven. So rather than stating a priority, it's the priority of the complainant.
No, I don't want to, well, okay, yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So the person that would be calling the enforcement person,
Right.
they should be listening to the person that is complaining rather than just driving around and seeing a violation and then acting on their own.
Right, and almost no jurisdictions in the state do that, sort of drive around and look for violations anymore.
Okay, so it's more that they're always getting a complaint from someone, and then that's immediate priority.
Right, and actually, you know, Evelyn, our system is complaint driven.
In Phoenix, they don't, because my house is in Phoenix and they do drive around.
I've got to disagree with you there because they are complaint driven.
Well, they told me they did.
Well, that may be it. That's rather interesting because I just gave a friend of mine down there some help with a zoning violation problem, several of them in their neighborhood. Since I used to be on one of the planning committees down there, I still know the regulations. Maybe they've changed it lately. But,
okay,
well,
so
when I told them, they said that they did take anonymous complaints.
Yes, they
and
do.
that they did drive around.
Whatever.
Okay, let's come back to our document.
Okay.
Okay.
You could on this LU 30, if you want to keep that in, it should just say enforcement should focus on neighborhood concerns.
But the question though, that, and Dave, and everyone, I agree that that's exactly what we want. But how do we define what a neighborhood concern is? Is a single individual complaint a neighborhood concern? And should all of a sudden the priorities shift? I think what we're trying to do here, I understand what we're trying to do. I don't see a practical way to expect anyone to implement that.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rob. That is the best way to characterize it. So
I agree with that also.
So how do you edit that sentence? What is that? LU 30?
Well, we had taken it out and I think
Yeah.
there was a discussion, you know, wanting to look at it again. So it
I'm
sounds
still in
like,
favor of not having it there. The priorities have to be established by the people that we elect and the people that we count on to make those priorities. We can't define it here and now for the next 20 years.
and I think when the subcommittee was looking at it, there was a question about in 20 years ago in 2000, there maybe was a focus on outdoor storage and
Sure.
lighting trespass.
That's true.
And that may or may not hold true today.
And all that, yeah.
So let me offer that oh golly, how did I have it? Enforcement of all zoning regulations should be consistent and fair in our planning area. And then that captures all of the policies and says, hey, the county needs to enforce everything.
Well, that's what LU 27 kind of says, right?
I was looking at 20, I was looking at 30.
Yeah, but the 27 says that.
You know, 27 and 30 are almost redundant.
I
meaning
agree.
they say the same
There's
thing.
value in 30.
Yeah.
You could take LU 30 as I see it on the screen here and take that right out of there.
Yeah,
We had taken it out. I just turned it back on just so that you could
Okay.
see it, but we had removed it.
Yep, that's what I thought.
Okay. Yeah, LU 27 covers the concern that was in 30.
Okay.
All right. We're getting, I think it's about 8:15. What time is it?
Well, we are done with this section.
That's good. Because my brain's fried.
And it is 8:15. Except for the public comment and.
Right. So, Melissa, I'm going to ask that you make a note, which I think you've already done, to come back to the concern that Bernice had. I don't remember which LU it was.
LU2.
LU2 and LU 16 or
16.
17?
It was 16.
At the beginning of our next meeting?
Right. And if you'd like, I can go back to the slides and we can just look at the public comment and wrap up the meeting tonight with.
Yes, let's do that, please, because I'm fried.
I would also like to add to reconsider the minimum lot size of 1 acre to change it to maintain existing lot sizes.
That's LU2.
Okay.
That's that policy too.
Okay.
So Brian, here's the schedule. And as we know, we're still in the drafting vision, goals and policies.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, pardon me. Looking to get the first open house scheduled, and it seems like we may be able to actually host an in-person open house. So we just need to get through these goals and policies so we can nail down a date for that.
Okay.
Okay. We've started to assemble the goals and policies, and we're starting to put some text around those so you can start to review the draft plan as soon as we get the goals and policies through an open house. So we are starting to move into the next phases of this process. The next meeting then will be scheduled for Thursday, July 8th, which is the second Thursday of the month. And the next topic to review besides the remaining land use policies would be to get into transportation.
Good.
Transportation circulation. And then with that, we have this slide.
Okay, let me then, I'm going to go to public comment, but I first want to recognize that Super Vasquez has joined us. And I'd like to give Supervisor Vasquez an opportunity to share if he would like to do so.
Sure. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Thank you for all your hard work. It was quite an adventure just in the 40 minutes I was involved in, and you guys have been going for a while. You're my third meeting since 5 o'clock, so I apologize for missing out the bulk of it. Arena was here to kind of keep me up to speed, and just want to let you know I am working on some transportation issues. Have met with have some meetings planned with Metro Plan and NAPTA to see what kind of options are available moving forward into the future. And so we'll see how things go. It's summer, so things are a little light, especially in the month of July. But come August, things will pick up again. So we'll be working on kind of seeing where things are at. I did hear and totally respect the concerns about code enforcement and violations and whatnot. And so I'll be talking to the staff to see, kind of be brought up to speed on what currently is happening and where there are areas that we can improve, and see how we can work towards supporting the community the best we can and find what's possible and what's not. So again, I really appreciate all the time all of you put into it, all the feedback. I know it sometimes feels tedious, and my brain is fried as well after I leave these meetings, but this is what it takes to create a plan, a really comprehensive, good plan for the community that's going to be used at least 10 years, if not 20 years from now. And so, this is important work. And so I thank all of you and really appreciate you and look forward to seeing this plan be completed. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Vasquez. Let me now open to the community members. So if you're a community member and want to comment, please raise your hand. You can do that electronically by going down to, I think it's reactions. And yes, it's reactions at the very bottom, and then you can raise your hand just as I've done right there. Any comments from the community? Let me go to Mr. Meyer.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to the response I saw earlier in the meeting. It was unsatisfactory to me. I suspect that the premise that I based my request on was not transmitted to the committee. I just didn't see anything relating to my premise. I listed 5 points in my premise, and I don't know if you guys saw that. So I'm going to very quickly list that. LU2 needs more work because LU2 does encourage developers for high density residential. It does so by listing several benefits. If the developer can provide those benefits, the LU2 is basically saying we as a community are giving you a leg up in the process if you can come up with one or more of those benefits. And then in LU2B, it actually says if there's no other way to get those benefits, then that project should be approved. That's the way it sounds. It's awful. And question 21 of the survey said 86% of the public in Doney Park, Timberline, Fernwood do not want to encourage high density residential in this plan. And I don't know how you can not see that in LU2 A and B. It's right there. And so that's my comment. I don't think that premise was transmitted to you guys because the response I saw tonight just didn't even mention it. So that's my comment. I'm glad to know that you're going to talk about LU2 in the future. Right now, the way LU2 subsections A and B are, they are not consistent with what the community wants. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. Other community people that would like to comment? Anybody else from the community? Hearing none, let me go to the committee. Any comments from the committee members?
Yeah, I'd like to say something here. Although I may have a lot to say about some of these topics, the whole idea is to encourage not just other committee members, but the public as well to think about what's being said and to come back and contest that if they feel it is necessary. The whole idea is to get people thinking about this and to improve the area plan. Whether you agree with me or not is not part of the equation. And just speak up, please. I'm not here to get a bunch of people to follow along with anything I'm saying. I just want you to think about it, please.
Thank you, John.
This is Evelyn. I was looking at some of the emails that Melissa sent out, and there was one on May 20th from a Lisa Adams. And I don't know if we ever talked about that. It's about subdivisions being locked out of the forest. And I remember we were going to talk about it, and I don't think we did. And Doug just reminded me of that because I remember getting Doug's email. And I know we didn't deal with it last week. And so I think those two public emails should be on the next agenda maybe, or we should confront those questions that these people had.
This is Melissa. If I could just communicate about that. So we did discuss Lisa Adams' specific question. It was regarding access, equestrian access through Slayton Ranch.
I think it's Frontier
Estates. frontage, right, but through Slayton Ranch.
Okay.
So there we did talk about that during the last meeting, and Mr. Meyer's email was forwarded to the committee and in its entirety. It wasn't displayed on the slide, so that I think is part why you all decided tonight to revisit land use policy 2 in that context next time.
All right.
But we can certainly, if you want to revisit Lisa Adams' particular
Yes.
concern, we can bring that up. That was a, yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of feel that, you know, if the public is putting out these questions, then we should definitely have it an agenda item or something so that we do discuss it as a committee. And I'm sorry, I may have forgotten about the Lisa Adams one, but I know we have kind of not talked about Doug's now, but hopefully next time we can, because I know it's something Bernice really wants to talk about.
Well, and Mr. Meyer's comment was posted on a slide here. There wasn't room for the entire email, but it was, and I don't think you had seen that at that point, Evelyn.
Okay.
Yeah, just to make that clear to everybody, that was one of the 2 public comment slides that we looked at the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
We did get the entire email sent to us, and I want to thank Doug Meyer, and I want to thank the others that have sent in emails also and participated in these meetings. I feel very strongly in agreement with Doug Meyer, and I think the integrity of our community is at risk, and I think that we need to do all we can to protect it.
Thank you, Bernice. Other committee member comments?
Brian, I like to close meetings on positive notes, and I can share on an unrelated topic that I interviewed the director of the National Weather Service and Flagstaff this afternoon, and he said next week monsoon starts and we should expect heavier than normal monsoon for the next couple weeks. So let's all hope for that. Huh?
Good. So any other committee member? Well, I want to thank all of the community members for attending. We will work to respond to your questions, concerns. And Mr. Meyer, we will be coming back with you on July 8th. Rob, you'll be at bat that night.
Yep.
So, but I do very much appreciate the community involvement. I also very much appreciate the time and energy that it takes for the committee members to be prepared for and then go through the discussions that we're having. Melissa, I'm going to come back to you. Any other thoughts before we conclude?
No, just some additional tips on how to stay current. Thanks,
And where are those posted for individuals to access later? Is it on the county website?
These are all on our, well, and the second line down is the website, and all of these are linked to the website.
Okay. Good. Any other comments or questions before we close the meeting? Well, thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you again on July 8th. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Brian.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Rob and Melissa, if you would stay on, please.
Sure.